Tuesday edition of the Sports Bash starts now. I'm your host, Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And, of course, you can watch the show live, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Search 973 ESPN. Game 2 of the Sixers and the Wizards, and the Hawks tonight. Got to miss those Wizards now, don't you? We'll break it all down for you coming up over the next couple of hours. Busy show today. Michael Kaskey-Blomain inside the Sixers today at 3:20. Also, Jimmy Lynam at 4:40 today. We'll talk a little bit more about the matchup. I want to get into what happened last night and give you my thoughts on that because that was a painful watch if you were watching Nets and Bucks and saying, all right, how do you match up with these two teams? Well, one of them right now appears to be a buzzsaw. And they played last night without James Harden. And we'll get into that. But what I want to start with is I think watching the Milwaukee Bucks last night is a great indication of why the Sixers don't ask Ben Simmons to score. Why they don't rely on him to score. Why they essentially acquiesce to, you know what? I'm not asking you to score. I'm going to ask you to create scoring. I'm going to ask you to generate scoring. You don't need to score yourself. You just need to generate points. Big difference. Because the Milwaukee Bucks, with Giannis Antetokounmpo as their guy, this is who they are. This is who the Bucks are. Antetokounmpo is a two-time MVP. And by the way, you don't hear people out there saying, you got to trade Giannis Antetokounmpo. Look, he scores. He could score 30 points. But when push comes to shove, the limitations in his offense become too much of an issue. And they are not going to get as far as they want to go if he's going to play that style of basketball. He might be flashier. He might put up more points. He might do a little of this. He shoots a little bit more. 0 for 3 from three-point range last night. 2 for 7 from the free throw line. That's not a big deal. They got crushed last night. But with Giannis Antetokounmpo, the limitations in his game, you cannot have him be your lead guy. And that's where the Sixers decided Ben Simmons is not our lead guy. And that's where the fans have to start saying, you know what? The Sixers use Ben Simmons better than the Bucks use Giannis Antetokounmpo. Look, Giannis in game 1 had a great night, 34 points. He was 16 of 24 from the field. He made 2 threes, but 0 for 3 from the line. He only has 4 assists. We talk about how many points he generates and how many points Ben Simmons generates. Giannis scores more. Simmons generates more. And you saw the Bucks last year, the year before that, and you're seeing it again. Why Giannis Antetokounmpo is the MVP of the league. But his game is not good enough to get the Bucks where they want to go. The limitations in his game, and look, Ben Simmons has limitations in his game. The problem is people want him to overcome the limitations. They want him to shoot. They want him to do this. They want him to do things. And the Sixers are saying, we know what your limitations are, and therefore we don't want, what's the term? Accentuate the positives. The Sixers want to accentuate the positives of Ben Simmons. They don't want to ask him to do things that he's not good at. The Bucks need Antetokounmpo to do things he's not good at. The Bucks do ask Giannis Antetokounmpo to do things he's not good at because they don't have enough. The Sixers do. The Sixers have enough to say to Ben Simmons, look, you have limitations. Let's not utilize those limitations. I don't need you doing this. I don't need you doing that. What I need you to do is make Seth Curry a better player. What I need you to do is make Danny Green a better player. I need you to make Tobias Harris a better player. And whatever you do to get points, go for it. If you get to the basket and get there and get to yourself a layup, great. If out in transition, you get going. If you get a steal and get going and dunk the other way. But the Bucks, they need Antetokounmpo because if they don't have him, they are just an average basketball team. I know they went and got Drew Holiday. I know they have Chris Middleton. But realistically, that Bucks team is just not good enough. And the reason they're not good enough, it's like saying, Ben Simmons, we want you to be the best player and the best scorer on the team. Yeah, Ben Simmons could score 30 points if you wanted him to. But you're seeing right now that that's not the recipe to win. The Sixers decided, hey, you have great skill sets. Giannis has similar great skill sets. But the Bucks need more from him than the Sixers need from Ben Simmons. And you watch that game last night, Giannis is at this point of his career where in the regular season, he's going to go bananas. He's just going to dominate regular seasons because teams are going to let you get to the basket whenever you want. He doesn't have to shoot the three. He doesn't have to do all the things that you need to do in the playoffs. But when teams defend him differently in the playoffs, he doesn't have the depth of his game that, say, Ben Simmons does. He doesn't have the same vision and passing ability and those, the ability to do all those things. When the double comes to Antetokounmpo, his instinct is to score. Giannis in his mind is a scorer. Ben Simmons in his mind is not. Giannis is a great defensive player. Same as Ben Simmons. Giannis can bring the ball up. Same as Ben Simmons. But what they don't do well is shoot the ball. And these teams are saying, Giannis, you're going to have to beat us. You're the best player. You're the MVP. You go out and beat us. And he can't do it. It's almost, I feel bad for him at some point. He was a little passive last night. And I think he's passive because like he's having his Ben Simmons moment. You're a better shooter than me, Middleton. You shoot it. Well, guess what? Chris Middleton, yeah, he's an all-star. 0 for 5 from 3 in game 1. Right? He wasn't feeling it in game 0 for 5 from 3 in game 1 from your all-star. And then last night, Middleton's 3 for 8. Drew Holiday had a good game in terms of efficiency, 6 for 10, but he's only 1 for 2 from 3. They just did not have the shooting. And people are like, well, Antetokounmpo was too passive. No, it wasn't. Yeah, he was passive, but it's not him being so much that he's passive. It's that he's understanding what Ben Simmons has come to terms with. I can't shoot. I'm not the best option to shoot, so I'm going to let others shoot. And those others, they don't want that moment. They want no smoke. Not in that moment. Not on that stage. Greeny said this today on Greeny on 97.3 ESPN.
Giannis is a great player. There isn't any question that he's a great player. He's got physical gifts beyond those that practically any player in the history of the sport has had. But what he does not have is the level of skill that the great players in today's NBA have. So what Giannis is an incredible piece of a championship team, but he is not the player you build one around.
Yeah, and it's not the player that you build one around. It's much like the Sixers with Simmons. What did I talk about the other day? I think Brett Brown, one of the problems that Brett Brown had was Brett Brown wanted to toe the line of whose team this is. Oh, it's Joel Embiid's team. No, it's Ben Simmons' team. No, it's Joel's team. It's Ben's team. Oh, it's both their teams. It's not both their teams. It's Joel Embiid's team. And Ben Simmons is a big part of Joel Embiid's team. But Joel Embiid has the goods to get it done in the big moment. And Ben Simmons, look, it's unfortunate. It stinks. You draft a guy number 1, you hope he transforms the whole franchise. But not every number 1 pick does that. We have this illusion in our head that if you get drafted number 1, you have to be LeBron James. You know what? There's not too many guys drafted number 1 overall that have changed the franchise. Michael Jordan wasn't drafted number 1 overall. So we have to get this out of our head that because you were drafted number 1, you have to be the ultimate difference maker. You know who else was drafted number 1 overall? Dwight Howard. What has he been? A great player in this league who has now turned into a role player. Andrew Bogut, Andre Bargnani, Greg Oden, Derrick Rose, Blake Griffin, John Wall. All of those guys, Griffin, Rose, Wall, all-star players. They're not changing your franchise. Kyrie, great player. He's not changing your franchise. Anthony Davis, great player. He's not changing your franchise. Anthony Bennett, Andrew Wiggins, Karl Anthony Towns, those guys. Anthony Bennett, bust. Andrew Wiggins, nice player. Nothing more than that. Karl Anthony Towns, great player. He's not changing your franchise. Even DeAndre Ayton, who is a lot better player right now than I ever thought he would be, didn't change the franchise. He's turned into a great role player on that team. And Ben Simmons fits the mold of the number 1 pick. You look at number 1 picks, they're more Ben Simmons than they are LeBron James. The number 1 pick is this thing in our mind that we have created that you get the number 1 pick, it's got to change the franchise. You know who changed the franchise? Shaquille O'Neal. Heck, you could go out and make the argument that even Allen Iverson, yeah, he changed the Sixers franchise for the better, but what'd they do? They went to the finals once? They didn't get out of the second round any other time with Allen Iverson. You know who changed the franchise? Tim Duncan. And I don't think people would put Tim Duncan at the top of the list of number 1 overall picks, but you should. Number 1 picks, Danny Manning, Derek Coleman, Larry Johnson, Chris Webber, Glenn Big Dog Robinson, Joe Smith, Elton Brand, Kenyon Martin. He was the number 1 pick, so he has to. No. You know what? He has to be the best player that he can be for this team. And last night, when you watch the Bucks, the problem with the Bucks is their best player has limitations, and they don't know what to do with the limitations. They don't know how to get around the limitations of Giannis Antetokounmpo. As Greeny said, he's great. He's a great piece. But he's a piece. Just like Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is a piece. He's a high-level piece. But luckily for the Sixers, you now see the difference. Giannis is the piece. Simmons is just a piece. And that's why the Bucks are probably going to get swept and get out of this thing. And I think you will likely see the Sixers win this game tonight and probably win this series in 6 games. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. That's the text board. If you're watching the show live video, leave a comment where you're watching, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Ike O is watching on YouTube. Says, I've been saying this for the longest. Superstars win championships. The Nets have 3 at the end of the day, and the Sixers only have 1. You need skills and shooting to win in this league from stars. Well, you know, we all would agree with that. The Nets have 3. Right now they have 2. James Harden is out. We don't know how long. I don't think there's any question, Ike, that we are seeing right now that the Nets defensively are better than we've given them credit for. They're playing good defense too, by the way. Now, are they playing good defense, or is Giannis that limited offensively? I don't know. You tell me. But you're right. Superstars win championships. The Sixers have 1. I would say 1. Ben Simmons is more of a all-star level player, not a superstar level player at this stage. Not with the limitations he has. He does certain things at a superstar level, but his entire game, its entirety, I would not say is superstar level. He could be. That's on him. I mean, that's his fault. That's his fault. Jeff is watching on YouTube, says, how y'all feel about Simmons guarding Trae Young? You'll see that a little bit tonight. I don't think you'll see it from the outset. Unless, look, the thing that Doc Rivers has said is he doesn't want Trae Young baiting Ben Simmons into some early foul troubles. And that's something that Trae Young does really well. He gets guys into foul troubles. So I don't think you're going to see him on Trae Young from the outset. I think there's one of two things that will happen. They will go with Danny Green on him again and change the way that they defend him with some help right from the jump. Or they would, and I think this is a long shot. They would start Matisse Thybulle and sit Danny Green and have Matisse defend him from the get-go. They are the options I see tonight. 609-403-0973. Mike, why in the world did the Bucks open up playing zone? The game was essentially over in the first quarter. That's a good question. I guess they figure, how are we supposed to match up? The Bucks are not a great defensive team. That's another problem. They're not a very good defensive team. So I guess they figure you see teams try to show a zone, and it kind of takes teams out of their rhythm early. And I think they just banked on, hey, let's try to show them this right off the bat or early on in the game and see if we can't get them out of their rhythm early. Well, that didn't work. I mean, Kevin Durant right now is playing at Kevin Durant's level. He was 12 of 18, 4 of 6 from 3. He's the best player in the tournament right now. And when you have Durant and Kyrie, I thought Kyrie played, a very steadying game last night. Because, and by the way, the one thing with that team is people think they're a horrible defensive team. You got to give the Nets some credit. I think they've taken that to heart a little bit and have played much better defense than anybody thought they would. But let's be honest. The Milwaukee Bucks, we all think, okay, they have Giannis, Middleton, and Holiday. Well, Middleton has been an all-star. I think he's been an all-star in what has been a weak Eastern Conference, to be honest with you. But nonetheless, he's been an all-star multiple times. He's not like a fly-by-nighter, but he just hasn't given that team enough. Drew Holiday was a little disappointing, and the rest of that team, I mean, you're depending on P.J. Tucker, Brooke Lopez, Bryn Forbes. It's a little thin, that roster, when you think about it. I like what Kendrick Perkins said this morning. And when he said what he said this morning, I was like in agreement and laughing a little bit. Because, we want to say, oh, this Bucks team is better. They've been kind of, the last couple of years, this Bucks team has had 60-plus wins, and then they've been disappointing come playoff time. Well, this year, they kind of hung out in the weeds a little bit. He said this morning on Get Up.
I'm so mad at myself for the simple reason is that I didn't stick to what I believed in, okay? I let people fool me with the 2-time MVP. I let people fool me that Giannis got better. I let people fool me that he's the defensive player of the year. Because of the fact of the matter is this. He is who he is, and he's going to continue to show us that he's not a number one option guy. And right now, Kevin Durant is spanking Giannis, got him over his lap and giving him a straight spanking. And when you look at it, he's having deer sausage and deer stew. He's doing whatever he wants to Giannis. I'm not even mad at Giannis. I'm not mad at the Bucks. I'm mad at Big Perk for letting people trick me to picking Giannis and the Milwaukee Bucks.
That was Kendrick Perkins today. He's making him deer stew. I mean, high-level stuff there. Look, that's the thing. Like I said before, there's 5 teams that can win a championship. One of them is, you got Brooklyn. I had Brooklyn because of their 3, the Bucks because of Giannis, the Sixers because of Joel Embiid, the Lakers because of LeBron, and the Clippers because of Kawhi. And what's interesting about that, Kawhi's still in this, so I guess he's the favorite on that side because he's starting to play well. But here's what I'll say. When I talked about this last week, LeBron James is starting to get to the end of the line here. We're going to have a new group of players that are going to start emerging into that group of guys that can win a championship. You've heard the stat by now. There's going to be a new team in the finals for the first time in 15 years. You're going to get a team that has not been in the finals. For the first time in 15 years, there's going to be 2 new teams in that finals. We're starting to feel basketball is about dynasties. It's about runs. It's the Spurs. It's the Lakers. It's the Celtics. It's the Bulls. Who's that next team that's ready to emerge? Because it was the Warriors. It feels like it's a new time this year, right now. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, brought to you by Matt Blatt Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Blatt, 6211 Black Horse Pike in Egg Harbor Township. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash. All right. Text board is open. 609-403-0973. Hit me up on the text board. If you're watching the show live through Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, search 973 ESPN. Find me there. Watch the show. Leave a comment in the comments section. If you're watching the show live, please share it wherever you're watching. If you're on Facebook, hit the share button or the like button. Subscribe on YouTube. Get the word out there. Let's get more people into our stream family. All right, coming up at 2:40 today, interesting Phillies story, by the way, and the mailbag with Frank Klose at 2:40. Michael Kaskey-Blomain. We'll talk some Sixers. Jim Lynam today at 4:40. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle. All right, Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app, and watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Go to 973ESPN.com or just search 973 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and you can watch the Sports Bash live each and every day. It's easy to do. So got a lot of text messages that are coming in. I'll try to get to a bunch. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973 is the text message number for you to get in. In my opinion, the Greek Freak is good enough to win a championship with the right supporting cast, but as good as he is, he's going up players who are significantly better. I don't disagree with that. But it's like Ben Simmons. He's good enough to win a championship. He's got the right supporting cast. The supporting cast for Ben is him not to be the main scorer. The problem for the Bucks is Giannis needs to be the main scorer. Earlier, a text message says Giannis isn't the problem. It's not that he's limited. It's that Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving are that much better. I mean, yeah, they're better. I'm not disputing that. They're not 125-86 better. I mean, the Bucks have beaten the Nets. They beat them twice in April, and I know that's the regular season, and it's a lot different. I don't doubt that Giannis can win a championship, but I don't know that Giannis could be the best scorer on the team. Now, he could be the best scorer if he can score the way that he scores well. There's a difference. His limitations, the problem is the Bucks don't have a secondary scorer that is good enough to really take the load off of Giannis. He has to score almost 30 points every single time out. But his limitations in a game like that, in a series like that, when teams can start planning on how to defend you, they show up. And that's the problem with Ben Simmons. Look, I'm not sitting here telling you Ben Simmons is Michael Jordan. He can't score like Michael Jordan can in a variety of ways. He could score. Look, if the Sixers said, Ben, you must score 30 points a game to receive your paycheck, I guarantee you he'd find a way to score 30 points. But that's not what he wants to do. That's not the best thing for the team. It's the best thing for the Bucks. It's all they got. Mike, will the Bucks organization tear it down if they get bounced again early? I'd have to look at their contractual situations. They're not going to, they just signed Giannis to the long-term deal. So they're going to have to build around him. They traded for Drew Holiday. Middleton, I think, signed a bigger deal. It's going to be hard for them to do it. You know what they're going to do. They're going to do what the Sixers did. They'll fire the coach. Budenholzer will be gone. That's evident. Budenholzer is Brett Brown. He was there, highly successful, won a lot of games, got him as far as he could take him. Time for a new voice. Doesn't mean Budenholzer sucks. It's time. Budenholzer's done a great job with that team, but like most coaches, it's time. I think it's time for that group. Text board, Mike, how bad a shape would the Sixers be in if they lose tonight? Nick from Brigantine. Nick, they'd be in bad shape, real bad shape. How bad a shape? Devastatingly bad. You can't be down 0-2 in this series. Would it be 0% chance that they come back and win? I wouldn't say 0, but I told you before, man, this Hawks team is legit good. You watch this Hawks team and watch like the Suns play. The team that just shoots the three, filtered with a lot of good shooters. They have an athletic big man that knows his role. Set screens, putbacks, dunks, all that stuff. Ayton, Capella, both similar. Ayton's even bigger than Capella. Ayton's turned into a nice player, man. He was the number one pick. You don't sit here and say he's got to change the franchise. But at the end of the day, he's a big part of that team defensively and setting screens and getting good looks for Booker and all that stuff. Mike, can we get Josh to apologize on air for spewing unjustified Blake Griffin hatred? Did you spew Blake Griffin hatred? He says he doesn't hate Blake Griffin. Did you say that he sucks or that he's, not very good or that he's washed up? He didn't have a great game last night. I mean, he's been better than I think people thought, but I mean, he scored 7 points last night.
My whole point about Blake Griffin always was you can't go into an NBA playoff series depending on Blake Griffin to be one of your primary scorers.
Well, he's not their primary scorer.
Right.
I don't know what the guy's point is.
I'm not fully sure what the guy's problem is. My beef was that people were acting like when they got Blake Griffin, this is a huge signing. Look at all their depth. And I'm like, if you think Blake Griffin is going to be the reason why the Nets win a game or a playoff series.
Scoring 7 points a game. What's that guy? Did he get you on a gotcha? Some guy scoring 7 points a game with 5 rebounds.
Yeah, and he had one nice dunk last night. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not on that guy's side here.
You know the guy who deserves credit. His name's Mike James. That dude has stepped up in the absence of Harden. I don't want to hear about Blake Griffin. Let's talk about Mike James. The dude was playing in Europe for several months. He came over here last minute, got on a 10-day contract, made the playoff roster. Harden goes down, and he has been incredible. He has outplayed Drew Holiday.
Well, Bruce Brown, too.
Bruce Brown's been solid all year, though.
Right, but I'm saying, last night.
Most people even know Mike James on the damn roster.
Bruce Brown, 6 of 10, hits a 3, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 13 points. Griffin, I guess he's rebounding. I mean, Griffin has turned into your classic 7 and 8 guy. I mean, yeah. All right.
Or maybe even a 10 and 8 guy.
I don't know that you need to apologize for anything negative about Blake Griffin. But guess what? If you took Blake Griffin off this team, they win that game 125-86 last night.
Yeah, he's not the reason why they won.
No. Sorry, dude. I can't agree with you that he has to take back any Blake Griffin hatred. No. I mean, if he was if
Griffin was going out there scoring 20 and 12.
No, if it was Blake Griffin in his first year in Detroit.
Yeah. I mean, that was nuts. When he was starting to hit all those threes and stuff in Detroit, that was nuts.
Who would you rather have on the Sixers, Giannis or Ben?
That's a ridiculous question because you have to change the team if Giannis is on you got to change the entire strategy. The reason why Ben works is like you said, Mike, you have a number 1 option in Joel Embiid. You have a number 2 scorer in Tobias. So you ask Ben to not be one of the primary guys on the offensive end.
Well, couldn't you do that with Giannis? If he was here. But the problem is, no, I would take Ben in this team over Giannis because Ben is a better ball handler.
He's also a better on-ball defender.
Well, he's a better defender. He's a better ball handler. He's a better passer. He's got better court vision. And quite frankly, what I think that people don't value Ben Simmons enough about is he controls the tempo of the game. When they're good, when they're winning. The other night, he didn't do that. He didn't do that at all the other night. I thought he had a mediocre game. But Giannis does not have the same, controlling the pace and the tempo of the game.
Giannis is not a primary ball handler. He's just a big guy who happens to be able to handle the ball.
Yeah, well, they need him to. Although they have Drew Holiday now.
They have Drew Holiday. Also, Middleton could be a ball handler.
They outthink themselves. It's we have Giannis. We have to do this with him. No, you can scale back what he does, accentuate his positives. The problem is they try to point out his negatives, his positives, and everything in between, and that's why they are going to get bounced and swept.
And that's why Budenholzer is going to get fired.
Wow, now that was angry. There was some spew there that I would ask for an apology for, but he probably will get fired. It's time, though. And it's not that Budenholzer stinks. He didn't do a bad job.
The time is done.
That's it.
There's an expiration date on this carton of milk.
Nobody has ever felt that they have been the best team. They have not failed. They didn't come up small. They just aren't good enough.
Listen, he just may be to what Giannis is, what Doug Collins was to Jordan. At some point, the message gets old and it can only go so far.
He'll go someplace else, probably immediately. Blake Griffin is better than Tobias Harris. Well, I mean, which Blake Griffin? The one that we're getting now or Blake Griffin in his prime? I mean, that's a poor comment. Come on, dude. You're better than that. All right. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. People do like dunks. All right. Coming up, we will talk with Frank, get his mailbag questions. A lot of them this week. And he'll join us on the other side. How about the news with Scott Kingery? Find out next. All right, 241 on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN, 609-403-0973 on the text board. A lot of texts coming in from our conversation. We'll continue to read them off. Michael Kaskey-Blomain inside the Sixers at 320. Jeff Nadu, how to bet the NBA playoffs coming up as well at 3 o'clock. Right now, it's time for another busy edition of the Phillies Mailbag with Frank Klose. The last couple of weeks, it feels like, Frank, the anger is out there. The Phillies fan base has essentially had it, and we're only in the second week of June. Do you feel that too?
Well, I think this week was tamer. Maybe it's because they're off 2 wins in a row against the Washington Nationals, but still, I feel like the overall sentiment of the fans as we put together these mailbags is they're still wondering about rebuilding and prospects and thinking far down the line and not so much this season.
Well, let's talk about the move that happened yesterday. The Phillies have outrighted Scott Kingery off the 40-man roster. 2 things. 1, were you shocked that was what it has come to? And 2, what did Dave Dombrowski say as to why this was their decision?
Well, for me, you may remember this, but at the end of spring training, I actually advocated for the Phillies to do this back then. I thought that if they had outrighted Scott Kingery, and just to clarify what outrighting means is basically you're going to take him off the 40-man roster, and any other team in baseball has the opportunity to claim him. And so what ends up happening is that the 29 other teams passed on Scott Kingery. And you might say, well, what would be the incentive for him to be claimed? Well, the Phillies owe him a lot of money. It's over $17 million. And I thought that if they had tried it at the end of spring training, there would have been an outside shot that somebody rolled the dice and claimed Scott Kingery. So the fact that it happened now was not of any surprise to me. I mean, let's face it, combined between AAA and the majors, he was striking out more than half of the time. And a small sample size, maybe 39 at bats combined at the 2 levels, but he was clearly not going to give the Phillies anything anytime soon. And the fact that he was on the major league roster was due to the fact that he was on the 40-man roster. And if you get him off of that, then you can try to do some other things. So having Scott Kingery off your roster allows him to go to the minor leagues. And as Dave Dombrowski said, he's there to basically learn how to hit again. They seem to say, oh yeah, his defense is fine, but he wasn't hitting there either. So maybe it was the pressure of coming up, but I think right now the message sent is he's got to go a long way before he can be back on the major league roster. And by taking him off the 40, there's no temptation to call him up every time there's an injury. And there's certainly been a lot of those.
Does this mean at this point that he cleared waivers? Can anybody just sign him now?
No, he's cleared waivers, but the Phillies assigned him to AAA, so he is through waivers. No other team.
The Phillies organization for the people out there, just because he's off the 40-man doesn't mean he's not still in the organization. Right.
So the Phillies have him under their control, and it might have been different if he wasn't due almost $18 million. But the fact that he's making all that money, no team out there wanted to roll the dice. So the Phillies paid an incredible premium to have him for 6 years at $24 million, even though he hadn't played above AA. Well, at the very least, for that money, they get to keep the rights to Scott Kingery right now.
All right, let's get to this mailbag and get to some of these questions. Dave wants to know, does management truly believe that when healthy, this team can contend?
I think there was a real market difference from Bryce Harper's return on Saturday and Sunday as well. Now, they weren't wonderful games, but when you add Bryce Harper back to the lineup, then all of a sudden you don't have Brad Miller in right field, right? We saw over the last few weeks that Brad Miller is not perhaps the best outfielder there is. And then when you don't have him starting in right field, well, then now you have Brad Miller to give Gene Segura a day off. Then you have Brad Miller to give Alec Boehm a day off. Then you have Brad Miller to give Andrew McCutchen a day off, right? So the trickle-down effect for each of these injuries is generally substantial, right? And the Phillies were even at the point where they had to put Scott Kingery in the outfield, and that's when he got the concussion, as you saw a few weeks ago. So having your healthy players, this team is so much better. I mean, even just adding Bryce Harper to a couple of games, not that he himself lit the entire world on fire with tons of home runs and stuff like that, but people start to get into their own roles. And when you get Didi Gregorius back, your shortstop's position is going to be a little better off, right? So the trickle down effect is very, very big. And I think that the Phillies, at the very least, they want to see everybody get healthy to see what's going on, right? Any day of the week, right? JT Realmuto in your lineup is better than Andrew Knapp and Rafael Marchand, right? When Gene Segura is not out there, they got some good play out of Nick Maton, but of course he kind of scuffled 0 for 20 stretch there before they finally sent him down yesterday. But you're missing the best hitter in your lineup.
He was the most popular guy 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, he was. But all of your depth was stretched when you were the Phillies here. So those 4 players, and I've said this on the air before, they were 10-8 when they had Harper, Gregorius, Realmuto, and Segura all in the lineup. Those are their 4 expensive guys in their lineup. When they're there, they're a very, very different team. And I think the Phillies still know that they have time to turn it around even before the trade deadline. So I would expect them to try to get healthy and then roll forward from there.
All right, so then Kevin wants to know, what will it take for the Phillies and Dombrowski to be buyers at the deadline? What do you think is the mindset there?
Well, here's the thing. If you're thinking about the trade deadline, I don't think the Phillies are going to go too crazy no matter what. I fully expect the Phillies to hang around. I think the fact that they're 2 games under the 500 mark, the fact that they're finally getting healthy, they're going to be okay. They're going to hang in among the other teams in the National League East, all kind of dealing with the same kind of issues right now. So I would expect them to add, but I don't expect them to go crazy. If you read the question a little bit further, he's talking about what prospects to trade. I don't think the Phillies are going to give up a lot in terms of prospects. I think they're going to try to get perhaps some marginal upgrades, perhaps from the bench. 2 spots really come to mind for me: having a left-handed hitting outfielder to basically be what Matt Joyce has kind of failed to be, which is somebody that could spell Andrew McCutchen in left, and have a bat from the left side to supplement McCutchen, who, by the way, his numbers are kind of showing he might be ready for a major league platoon situation. So you need that. And then I also think it'd be wise to get somebody who could play the infield with solid defense. Now, one name I brought up was former Philly Freddie Galvis. He's on a very reasonable $1.5 million salary down in Baltimore. I don't think it costs you a lot to trade for somebody like him. But as Phillies fans are certainly familiar with Freddie Galvis. I don't expect him to come up here and be a starter if they trade for somebody like him. But wouldn't it be nice to have somebody to throw at third base in the late innings as a defensive replacement? Wouldn't it be nice to have a strong defensive shortstop if Didi Gregorius' elbow kind of lingers on and remains a problem? So I think getting somebody who could play the left side of the infield and kind of cover the late innings for Bohm, as we've seen his defense not be wonderful this year, and could fill in for Didi Gregorius, I think would go a long way. Little pickups like that generally don't cost you a lot in terms of prospects. I don't think the Phillies are willing to give up prospects right now because Dave Dombrowski is here for the long haul, and he wants those prospects they have to rise up through the system and help the Phillies.
All right, let me ask you, if they're just mired in this mediocrity and they're just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, do they consider something major? And I say major, I'm not talking about trading Bryce Harper or JT Realmuto or Zach Wheeler, probably Aaron Nola. But what about like Rhys Hoskins and just saying, you know what? It's time to just change the complexion of the core here.
See, as far as I'm concerned, those types of change the complexion type moves, they're going to be the ones that happen off season, right? You don't really sort of rewrite your major league roster at the trade deadline. Now, there have been times in history where teams have done so because the opportunity was there in front of them and they've done it. But the most major, if the Phillies went into sell mode, the most major thing I see them doing is maybe eating some money and trading McCutchen to a contender that wants a right-handed bat for an outfield platoon. Like I maybe trade one of their free agents to be. I mean, if Herrera's hitting this well, maybe you try to trade him or something like that. But I don't think there's really a lot to sell because the as you said, the Harpers, the Realmutos, they're here for the long haul, and I think the Phillies expect them to be there for the long haul. So, but again, I think the Phillies are going to kind of hang around. And if they're going to hang around, then maybe they try to add a couple pieces and see if they can't sneak into the playoffs in this NL East.
All right, Frank Klose's Phillies mailbag. You can always get him at Frank Klose. You mentioned the injuries, and this team is getting healthier, and they're getting some guys back. If they need, like, you look around this team, you mentioned some backup spots, and that's one. But if they were to say we need an upgrade in the starting lineup somewhere, where would that be?
That's a really good question.
Like, do they think this starting 8 is good enough and it's a playoff starting 8 and they just need to be healthy? Or do they say, if they needed an upgrade that was to the everyday lineup, or even, I guess the starting rotation, that whole Spencer Howard thing is another mess.
Yeah, I would say that the Phillies would try to supplement with not necessarily starting player. I mean, I'll put it this way: if Chris Bryant falls into your lap and he can play some third base or he can play some left field, maybe you consider it. But those types of moves are more bigger picture moves. Those are the types of moves I don't think that they would make in season, because if you look around center field doesn't have a lot available. If Herrera's hitting, I guess you try to ride it. So I don't know if you would try to pay for somebody to try to upgrade there. Segura is going to be here for the end of his contract. I think Gregorius will be here until the end of his contract. Hoskins, we've talked at length about perhaps Hoskins and Bohm not being able to coexist, particularly if there's no DH next year. But I just don't see those types of moves happening right now. I think the best you're going to see is some upgrades, and the Phillies. It's not so much I think they think it's the playoff ready lineup. I just think the position that they're in, the way that things have set up over the last several years, and what Dave Dombrowski inherited, this is going to be what they have to have for the rest of the year. And the best upgrades I think will come in the form of bench and supplementary players in this at least in terms of the starting lineup.
Frank Klose's Phillies Mailbag premieres every Tuesday here on the Sports Bash, and you can read it in full at 97.3ESPN.com. And Frank, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, Frank, Phillies and Braves, big series this week, by the way.
Should be, and I think the Phillies need a win tonight against Drew Smyly, who has an ERA almost of 6. I think it's very important they take this first game so that they're better set up for the rest of this series.
Hey, what do you think, real quick, I got about 40 seconds, about this whole spin rate, and people are saying, oh, look at Trevor Bauer, all of a sudden he's not as good.
Well, we do know that the Major League Baseball bought Rawlings, who makes the baseballs, and they bought it so they could control what the baseball does. I think that's something worth looking into. I don't know what happened this year. I don't know what they'll admit to if something happens. But I think there's a little smoke there. We'll see if there's any fire behind it.
Story all of a sudden, if these pitchers all of a sudden are like, hey, all of a sudden this guy's mediocre, or going back to the Trevor Bauer that he was before that he won Cy Young awards, that would be a very interesting thing. All right, Frank.
Absolutely. Well, have a good one, Mike.
All right, Frank Klose, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline, and of course, coming up at 3:00, we got NBA action tonight. How do you bet these games? Jeff Nadu from the Hoops Betting Hour will join us to talk a little bit about that. And at 3:20, Michael Kaskey-Blomain is here to talk more NBA playoffs, the Sixers and the Hawks tonight. Are the Bucks done? Plus, the Western Conference series are underway. One of them, the Suns last night beat the Nuggets, and then tonight it's Clippers and Mavs. So we'll preview all that with MKB. Coach Jimmy Lynam at 4:40 today. I hope you'll stick around for that. And don't forget, you can watch the show live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Search 973 ESPN on those platforms, and you can be a part of the show through the live video stream. You can watch the show through your smart TV and the YouTube app. I'm Mike Gill. This is the Sports Bash.
A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN, home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got him!
WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City. This is the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Now, live inside the Matt Black Kia Studios, here's Mike Gill.
All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, watch the show live. As many of you have chosen to do, we appreciate you at 97.3ESPN.com through the Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter platforms. Just search 973 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill. That on the right, my right, is Jeff Nadu, the Hoops Betting Hour. They've provided a plethora of winners and content to bet these NBA games. We're going to go over a little bit of that and some other stuff right now here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline with Jeff. What's going on, man?
Hey, Mike. Always good to talk to you. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, brother. We got Sixers and Hawks game 2 tonight after quite a disappointing Sunday. So we'll get into your thoughts on that game and tonight's game and last night's games and all the games ahead, how to bet these games and more. But I would ask you, was the game disappointing enough on Sunday that you would think the Sixers are in real trouble?
Yes, definitely. I bet against them in game 1. I bet against them in this series. I think this fan base and really the general NBA is really not giving enough credit to a team like the Hawks, teams like the Suns, teams like the Jazz. We're scared, I think, as fans to kind of pass the torch to some of these teams, but the Atlanta Hawks are a really good basketball team. I think they do a lot of things that are going to bother the Sixers, and I think tonight sets up, which we'll get to, good for the Sixers, but I think people have to remember, I mean, the game the other night I don't think is quite indicative of what the Hawks are. I think in the first half they kind of overachieved a little bit. I think in the second half they underachieved, and I think they really just kind of allowed the Sixers to creep back into the game. I thought at the end of the game, the helter-skelter stuff from them was really just bad coaching. I thought they should have inserted Lou Williams at one point and just kind of move some things around. But I think to just assume that Trae Young's just going to be held down by Ben Simmons or somebody else. Look, did Doc make some bad decisions? Of course he did. But Trae Young is a really good basketball player, and the Sixers don't have Trae Young on their team. They have Joel Embiid, but they're going to need other people to step up. So, yeah, I do think this is a bad matchup because if you lock down Trae Young, the great thing Trae Young could do is he's a great passer as well, and they have a plethora of kids that can shoot. And they didn't even have DeAndre Hunter. A lot of people don't remember. Hunter was a 30-minute-a-game guy. He was averaging like 15 points a game. He is a guy that I think will stop. You talk about defender. He can defend his ass off as well. So I think this is a very scary series for the Sixers, and I thought there was value on the Hawks here.
Yep, I agree. I said it beforehand. Look, this is not the Wizards. This is a team that can shoot, and they have a superstar. I mean, you're seeing that this guy's a superstar. Now, are they going to hit 23s? Probably not. Do they have to hit 23s? I mean, they needed every bit of every 20 of those threes in the first game. I thought the Sixers really had a poor, obviously, defensive scheme that they did not get out of fast enough. And then that stretch where they went to the all-bench lineup, really, I thought was the difference in changed the complexion of that game. It buried them there down 20, down to 26 at one point. But I don't think we'll see that all-bench lineup again.
No, I mean, I think one thing they have to do, obviously outside of the Danny Green matchup with Trae Young, is Doc Rivers has to stop going 10, 11 deep. But that's not necessary in the playoffs. The only people I want to see off the bench are Thibault, Maxey, and maybe Dwight Howard for a little bit just to spell Embiid or something. But I don't want to see Korkmaz. I don't want to see Mike Scott. If you're a Sixer fan, you don't want to see those guys. They're not Shake Milton. I don't want to see those players in the playoffs. And Doc Rivers that was one of the worst coaching games I've seen in a long time in the NBA and in sports. He was a disaster the other day, a disaster.
Tonight we see the line at 6 across the board, everywhere. Opened at 5.5. It's up to 6 right now. It feels like people think the Sixers will make the proper adjustments.
Mike, I was sitting at FanDuel waiting for this line to come out Sunday. I bet it at 4.5 right away. I took the Sixers. I got the true opener. But you're right. Most of the time the line was 5.5. You would imagine this is a very good zigzag game. I know people will call out and say, well, the Bucks were being a zigzag last night, but that's a different opponent. For the Sixers, obviously they are going to be the favorite in the series, and they're the team that I think in a zigzag makes sense here. You're at home. You'd have to imagine, as you alluded to, Hawks probably aren't going to make 20-ish threes. Keep in mind, though, this is a team that shot 37%. They have a bunch of kids that can shoot the ball. And I do think there's some match.
They make 14 a game.
Right. No, yeah, again, they're a good shooting team. And, I think one of the matchups that I worried about for the Sixers in this series was John Collins. I don't think the Sixers have a particularly strong matchup against John Collins. I think you obviously key in on Trae Young. It's going to be about, can Trae Young dictate and can he pass the basketball, which I think he can. This is a guy that averages about 9.5 assists a game. So, yeah, I think the Sixers will be better defensively. We saw in the Washington series. Remember that game one, Mike? They really struggled to get stops, particularly in the first half. The next game, they were nails defensively. Now, I don't think they're going to give up 97 points tonight, but I think it's like a mid-100, 105, 107, 108, something like that. I think the Sixers win by double digits here. I think they're in a position to come back, have a better go of it, obviously right the wrongs that they had the other night, but it's going to be a real tough series. Atlanta's done, I think, what they were hoping to do. Come in here. Obviously, you want to win both games if you can, but winning one game is huge for this series. I'm going to tell you this right now, and I don't know if you've said this. I'm sure you maybe have alluded to it because you're very strong at what you do. Since the Sixers were in that series against the Raptors a couple years ago, remember that crazy shot? This is the most important game for the Sixers in a long time. This will dictate what I think this team is capable of. If they lose tonight, this series is over, and this team will fail again to get to the Eastern Conference Finals and further. They must win tonight. You cannot lose. You have to come in and respond the right way. You can't make the same dumb mistakes. You can't allow Trae Young to beat you. You can't keep going under screens. You have to win this game tonight, and you need to come out and really light the world on fire here.
Jeff, the line opened 225.5. It's up to 224.5. What's that mean?
I think the number's probably about right. I kind of lended to believe that this series would have been a higher-ish scoring series. I'm not thinking that it's going to be 128, 124 every game, but I think one team probably pushes 120 if total's kind of in the mid-220s. Both these offenses are pretty damn good, and it was pretty clear that you have to center the world tonight around Joel Embiid. The Hawks, even though Clint Capella is a good player, they don't have an answer for Joel Embiid. We saw that. Even on basically a torn meniscus, he scored 40 points. So, Tobias Harris will be more assertive tonight. I always thought that this series would kind of lend over the total. 225 is not bad. I'd more or less want it more towards 221, 222, something like that. But I think the Sixers will have a lot of success tonight scoring. I would think it'd go over, but I'm kind of involved myself in this series with sides.
So that's Sixers Hawks from the betting standpoint. Let's go to the night game. Clippers and the Jazz. I say night game. They're both at night. This is the late night game for the night owls out there. Jazz come in, starts out -3.5. It's now 3 across the board. So the Clippers, who get out of that series in 7 games, they go into Utah as a 3-point dog.
Yeah, when I did my show earlier, I didn't make a pick on this game because for me to bet Utah here, I wanted the full complement of players. We just got recent word about an hour ago that Mike Conley's not going to play. And that takes off the approach for me tonight in this game. I'm just going to kind of watch as a fan and see where it goes. But I think there are some real concerns for the Clippers in this series. They were able to use that small ball lineup that really affected the Mavs a lot. But the concern that they had when they went to the small ball lineup is they went to Boban Marjanovic, and Boban Marjanovic had a good series late in that series. Rudy Gobert is a guy that I think is going to give them some real problems. Throw in the fact that Royce O'Neal he is among the best defenders in the league for Utah. I think you can make him, because he's just a strictly defense guy. You have enough guys when fully healthy that he can just play defense. If he plays defense against Kawhi will have some issues. But I need the full complement of players because Utah's not a deep team. I'm away from this game tonight. I think Utah wins this series, but this makes it interesting because without Conley, now you've got to start. You have Clarkson, but now you got to see more Niang. You got to see more of guys like that, which are not good for Utah. They're not a deep team. So, the Clippers maybe steal one here. You need to get Conley healthy, though. That's important.
No doubt. Jeff Nadu, the Hoops Betting Hour. You can check him out on Twitter at Jeff Nadu. They do it live on Twitter each and every day. What's that, at noon?
Yes, noon Eastern. Yep, I tweet out a link. We kind of just go over picks. We don't ask for anything. We just go over picks. That's what we do.
So I want to get into this real quick because Thursday is Game 3, Nets and Bucks. You can get the Nets right now plus 3.5. You jumping on that?
Well, look, I've been burnt by the Bucks, man. This is I've had a great playoffs, but these two games I've lost both. I've really been disgusted with this effort. Mike Budenholzer's gone. He'll be on the unemployment line in about a week or so. I don't know how you don't play it.
I mean, they got to get. They're going to sweep the series, right?
Yeah, and it's crazy because they're doing it without James Harden as well. I mean, the effort last night by the Bucks was one of the more disgusting efforts I've seen in a long time. I don't know what that was. It's really a shame. They need to go young. They need to go out and get a hot young coach because a hot young coach can make a difference. We've seen that with like Ty Lue. Ty Lue's been really good. That small ball move from Beverly and Zubac to basically Morris, Mann, Kennard, Batum, that was a great decision. You see Chauncey Billups getting a lot of love. You got to go younger. You got to go with these tacticians that can make decisions on the fly. That's what you do in the playoffs. So, yeah, I think maybe they get one. It could be Game 3, but I have a hard time putting my money on the Bucks right now.
Yeah, I mean, I see. Look, the Nets are getting 3.5. All this Durant and Antetokounmpo stuff, it feels like Durant's on a mission to blow this thing open and get it over with. So plus 3.5 right now. I might jump on that before it moves. Tomorrow night, Jeff, it's Nuggets-Suns. Suns look good last night. Nuggets look tired last night. That one is 6 across the board.
Yeah, the Nuggets have real problems in this series. I mean, the golf and talent at guard in this series is so strong. I mean, Booker and Paul against Campazzo and Rivers is really not fair, frankly. This is where you're going to miss Jamal Murray. Michael Porter is exploitable defensively. And, Nikola Jokic, say what you want about Jokic, but Ayton's a pretty damn good player as well. I mean,
I said that in the first hour, man. He has gotten way better.
A lot of people will give them flack because in 2018, Doncic and Young were part of that draft, and they've been terrific, but Ayton might be the third best player out of that group, and it fits that team perfectly. Mike, it really hurts and makes you sick because I know this town is like obsessed with Matisse Thybulle. Mikal Bridges is a better player overall. He's better offensively. He's just as good defensively. It sickens me to believe that this team had Mikal Bridges and they traded him away on draft night for Zaire Smith, who's not even in the NBA anymore. Really pathetic and sickening. But I like the Suns. I think they can win the title, surely.
Get the pick that ended up getting them Harris.
True. Yeah, but listen, Mikal Bridges is really good, Mike. I hate to tell you.
He was great last night. Last night.
And he's a great compliment to Crowder and everyone else they have. They're really good. I'm very happy with where I'm sitting with them. I have a big future on them, so I'm very happy.
We talked about that in our prop swap today. Is if you got the Suns at the beginning of the year 100-1, you could have had them.
Mike, my brother, I actually spoke to him about this the other night. My brother called me. My brother's not a huge sports bettor. He's more of a stock Bitcoin kind of guy, but my brother called me. He's a Suns fan. His whole life he's loved the Suns. Loved Grant Hill, all these different guys. Amari. He says to me, beginning of the season, I put $1,000 on 40-1.
There you
go.
Only
Only bet he's made in like months.
40-1. He should prop up that ticket.
Yeah, and I told him, he's like, I didn't even know this website existed. He's like, I think he's gonna wait probably another series to get, I think, a nice return out of it. But it's a great thing for bettors now that you have that resource.
Yeah, they were 100-1 when the season started.
But right before the Chris Paul trade, they were.
Yep, 100-1. So if you bought that ticket at 100-1, you could post that now, and you could go buy that and get 100-1 odds on the Suns. So that's.
I think they're 6-7-1 right now. So.
Yeah, they were this morning. I saw them. They are 15-2. So right about there, 6-7-1. Jeff Nadu tomorrow. By the way, I've been hearing great stuff about the sit down.
Yeah, the sit down's been. I've been very proud of this, man, Mike.
Somebody told me they got in some rabbit hole the other day and landed on that and just kept going.
Yeah, Mike, I'll tell you, I've sports betting I've been doing for a long time, and you just kind of lump into things. But this is a totally new thing I started. I didn't know what it would be, but yeah, I mean, I just heard over 60,000 listens in 9 episodes. I'm getting people that, I never thought, I didn't even know who they were listening to it on message boards, all sorts of things. So yeah, I'm very happy with it. I think eventually I hope it gets picked up somewhere, and I think it's a huge market. It's something that no one's really doing, and we do compelling stuff. We talk about compelling people, and people like it. So I appreciate you mentioning it. I've been very proud of it. So
Jeff Nadu, the Hoops Betting Hour tomorrow at noon. They'll be breaking down all the NBA games and more. How to bet the NBA playoffs. There he is, Jeff Nadu. All right, man. We'll talk to you next week, pal.
Thanks, Mike. Always good to talk to you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. And coming up here on the Sports Bash, we go to MKB, Michael Kaskey-Blomain, CBS Sports NBA writer. We'll get his thoughts on all these NBA playoffs, the Sixers and the Hawks. Are the Bucks done? The Western Conference and more with our boy MKB. He was the lowly 97.3 ESPN Sixers insider. And then CBS Sports said, you know what, we need that guy. They scooped him up from us. But he remembers his roots, and that's why I like MKB. You always remember your roots. You always remember who gave you your start. MKB's coming up. All right, game 2 tonight, and you can hear it all right here on 97.3 ESPN. Michael Kaskey-Blomain will be covering it for CBS Sports. And he, like all guests, appears via the Boardwalk Honda hotline as the Sixers got smacked early in that game, came back, fell short. But what are some of the key changes that we should expect to see tonight? Michael Kaskey-Blomain has been covering the Sixers all season long and the NBA playoffs, and he joins us now here on the Sports Dash MKB. What's up, my man?
What's up, Mike? How you doing?
So you're there and you're seeing what's happening early. And at what point were you saying, hey, it's time to make an adjustment in this game?
A lot sooner than Doc Rivers, apparently. No, honestly, it was about midway through the first quarter when it was, became pretty evident that Danny Green was not the guy to have on Trae Young. And at that point, it kind of baffled me, for the rest of the first half that no adjustment was made. So, to me, it was something that I noticed within, several minutes of that game starting.
So do you expect then tonight, I asked you that question first, because do you expect him tonight to start Danny Green out again there, but have a shorter leash?
No, I don't think so, Mike. I think this is the type of thing, they lost home court advantage already, lost the first game at home. I think you got to go with, obviously, a different option. Ben said after last game that he wants to be the guy that's on Trae for the majority of the game. I would be pretty surprised if he does not start out on Trae at this game. I think it was a situation where it became pretty clear that Danny just, didn't have the foot speed. He was getting beat by, blown by every time. And so much of the damage that the Hawks did in that game was the direct result of, Trae beating that first defender and then either finding, Capella or John Collins for lobs, or the guys having to help in off the shooters because, Danny was beat and then he would kick out to the corner. So to me, having Ben on him will at least limit and make it more difficult for him to get into the paint, which, whereas things snowballed for Atlanta once he gets in there.
Now, isn't the concern from Doc and the Sixers that you put Ben on him, he could pick up a couple fouls early? That's where Trae Young excels. He's the master of drawing fouls. You pick up a couple ticky-tacks early. I feel like that's why he didn't want to start Simmons on him early in the game.
Yeah, it definitely was. And it's also just to save him for, down the road in that same game. Doc did that several times throughout the regular season. We saw it with Bradley Beal, with James Harden, where he would start a different defender, be it Danny or Tobias or somebody else early on, and then go to Ben in the second half. But this is, for all the marbles, as they say, you definitely don't want to fall behind this team 2-0 and lose both games in Philly. So to me, if you're Doc, you tell Ben, listen, you need to be disciplined. We want you to apply the pressure that you were doing in the second half of game one. Obviously, Trae's going to look for those fouls. He's great at, drawing the defender in and going up and getting the ticky-tack fouls. But, Ben is an elite level defender. He's a finalist for Defensive Player of the Year for a reason. And to me, if you're the coach, you have to say, listen, this is going to be your responsibility. You need to be disciplined. You need to, not reach and just do what you can.
Any thought, MKB, that they would go with Thibault over Green and do that in the lineup?
It would make some sense, but I really don't think so, Mike. Doc doesn't seem to me to be the type of guy that would panic and change, his starting lineup that brought them a lot of success the entire year. I don't think he's the type of the coach that would just really quickly make that adjustment. And also you have to consider the opposite end of things. Danny, whether or not he's knocking down his shots, he's known and respected as a guy that can do that, where, by default, the defenders are going to be paying attention to him. When you bring in Matisse, then you've got two guys out there in Ben and Matisse that are not, known or respected as floor spacers, and you're going to want to have as much space for Joel to operate. So I don't think there'll be an adjustment to the starting lineup. I think maybe there'll be changes quicker in terms of rotation patterns and things like that. But no, I do think Danny will stay in the starting spot.
Yeah, I agree with what you said on offense. Is that he has made a lot of big shots for this team last month, and you can't take that. He was 0 for 5 the other night. Can't take that element off the court. That's the balance here that I find to be very difficult. Is he has been a big part of why their offense works. You take him off, I think that minimizes the value of Ben Simmons on offense. That minimizes what they do offensively. They work offensively because they have two high-level three-point shooters. You take one out of the mix, and that allows teams to sag off Ben Simmons and take Curry out more. So you almost have to have those three guys together, Curry, Green, Simmons.
Yeah, and especially something that I want to see more of in this game is I want to see more of Joel in the post early on. I would like to see him establish himself down there. I was rewatching the game earlier today, and it took almost 6 minutes into that first quarter before we saw Joel get a post touch. As soon as he did, the double came and he kicked it across the court to Seth Curry for a three. So to me, that's your biggest advantage as a team is Joel in the low post. It's not the Joel of the past couple of years where, getting him the ball and then having him doubled could be an issue. He handles the double teams really well, and that, creates opportunities for others, or it gets him into the paint where he can either, finish or get to the foul line. So I want to see him in the post more. And in order for that to work, exactly like you were just saying, Mike, that's why you need Danny out there. You need the space he generates. And Matisse, as great as he has been defensively, he just doesn't generate that same space at the offensive end at this point.
One thing Trae Young is a good defender. But that didn't factor into this game. Can the Sixers do more of trying to get him on the ball?
100%, Mike. I think that's absolutely one of the biggest adjustments that they need to make on the offensive end. I think they talked about that after the game a little bit. Tobias specifically said that they could do a better job of, basically hunting him on the offensive end, forcing him into switches, making him, defend a guy like Tobias in the post, making him defend a guy like Ben on the perimeter or in the post, and just, generally making him work on the defensive end. It'll take energy from him, potentially get him in, pick up some fouls, maybe get him into foul trouble. And like you said, that's his, by far the weak part of his game is on the defensive end. And I don't think the Sixers took advantage of that, really at all in game one. And I definitely think that's something they should, zone in on in the second game.
Yeah, I mean, because you look at the mismatches, they don't really have a guy to defend Ben Simmons. I mean, that's an area where they struggle. And he was mildly aggressive, I guess. He got some layups. He had 19 points, I think it was, 7, I think, attempts, the 10 free throws. Only made 3. That's a factor. That became a factor. The hack of Ben and all that stuff, yada yada. That became a factor because he shot 30% from the line. If he shoots 60% from the line, they probably have a chance to win that game.
Yeah, it came into play just like it did in the Wizards series, Mike. It wasn't the main reason or the sole reason that they lost, but it factored into it. And it's, at this point, there's nothing else that can be said. He needs to be better from the line. He does a lot of great things on the floor. Floor spacing isn't one of them, but at least being able to have some confidence and shoot 50 or 60%, obviously ideally closer to 70% from the line. That it's just something that he needs to do as a superstar caliber player. We saw it with Giannis and the Bucks last night where he struggled immensely to convert on his free throws. And, when you're at that level in these clutch situations, your skills are going to be important and your flaws are going to be exposed. And that's, unfortunately what's happening to Ben, and there's nothing that they can do about it except tell, he needs to step up and knock him down at a better clip.
No doubt. I mean, but you're going to see the hack of Ben probably again. I thought that backfired on them a little bit in game one. They're hacking them when they're up. They're stopping the clock. So I thought that kind of backfired on them a little bit there. But it's the course of the game. You can't just get these opportunities. Even if you make 1 out of 2, you got to step up and make one. You can't miss them both every time you step to the line. MKB's with me from CBS Sports, covers the NBA. Sixers-Hawks game 2 tonight at 7:30. Right here on 97.3 ESPN. Tom McGinnis has the call. Tobias Harris, what'd you think of his role in the game, game 1 on Sunday?
I thought he played well. I think he could have played better, obviously, but I don't think his play was, one of the first few reasons that came to my head when I thought of all the things that went wrong. I think he could have been a little bit more aggressive at times. And like I said, he said after the game, he thought he personally and the team as a whole could have done a better job in hunting mismatches, which is where I think, that's where he really showed, like this season specifically, he really stood out when he'd get a smaller guy on him on the blocker in the post and he'd back him down and score right over him. He could have done more of that, especially like we were just saying with, getting Trae Young on him. I'd like to see him do more of that tonight. But, overall, he's been solid in this postseason so far. I don't have, many complaints about his play.
I thought he played good, not great. He
right.
was like, he was half Tobias from last year and half Tobias from then. He had moments and then he kind of reverted back. It's like, I want to see him be a little bit more decisive and aggressive. He had moments in the middle of that game, I feel like. But then when things were going good, it felt like he was going good. One thing, that all bench lineup.
Whew.
You tweeted the other day, I think it was, that he keeps saying it and you keep waiting that he's not going to do it. Is he going to keep doing it?
I mean, it really is that situation all year. I assumed once the playoffs rolled around that it would stop. And then we got to that Wizards series, and then I'm like, okay, it's the Wizards. This is a team that they can beat. He's just trying to save some minutes for his guys. I thought it would stop, but that first half of that last game was brutal.
The Nets are rolling 8 guys, right?
Yeah, eight guys, and other than garbage time. That's how most of these teams are. I don't think there's any other team left in this league right now playing an 11-man lineup, consistent minutes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Do you? He did say the other night that he probably shouldn't play all 5 guys together, right?
Yeah, he did concede that.
So, I feel like you have to have either Simmons, Harris, or Embiid on the floor almost at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, I would be very surprised if we saw that again. They were outscored over like a 4-minute period by 10 points. They had 5 turnovers, no field goals. This is what they always say. This is the playoffs. The starters play more minutes. The rotations get shorter, and that's the case for a reason. The Hawks, did not play as many deep guys at the same time as the Sixers did, and it ended up being a huge advantage for them, and ultimately probably the deciding factor in the game. They were down 10. When Doc went with the all bench, they were outscored by 10 points. At that point, you're down by 20 in the first half, and they really, they tried their best in the second half, but they could never dig out of that hole.
Michael, are the Bucks done?
Yeah, they're toast.
Just done.
Put some butter or some jelly on them because they're toast. Which I'm shocked and disappointed, but watching them play yesterday, you don't lose by 50 in a playoff game like that, the way they played, and they just don't seem to have any answers either.
Is it the realization that we have put the best collection that we have had, and we still aren't good enough?
Unfortunately, too, it starts with Giannis. It's the same story. You can put guys around him, whoever you want. He's, he got some numbers in these games, but if you're watching him, he's just not a go-to guy down the stretch. He looks exactly the same as he's looked. He's, you can put a plan in place to defend him. He can't shoot. He struggles at the foul line, and everything kind of just stems from there.
It's very much like the difference is the Sixers have kind of come to terms with Ben Simmons' limitations, and then they've accentuated his positives and said, we're not going to ask you to do this. The Bucks still need him to do things he can't do.
And he's also the best player on their team. The fact that, if Ben Simmons was the best player on a team that was built around him, I think you'd see a lot of these same issues that you're seeing with Milwaukee. Luckily, obviously, in Philadelphia, you have Joel Embiid, who is the go-to guy there.
That Suns team, legit?
Yeah, they look great last night. They have all the pieces, at least to make a run here. Obviously, they got the veteran leadership, and Chris Paul and Jay Crowder has been playing great. The star and Devin Booker. And DeAndre Ayton, to me, is one of the stories of the playoffs. He was great in that first round against the Lakers. He, did a great job on Anthony Davis when he was in there. And then last night against Jokic, Jokic got his numbers as he's going to do, but he made him work for them. And then he made him work on the defensive end too. So to me, DeAndre Ayton has been a real key for the whole Suns run.
I'm telling you, man, it feels like, I said this a couple days ago with no LeBron. I guess if the Nets win, you got Durant and but like it feels like there's kind of a change in here where a month ago I would see there's only 5 teams that can win: the Lakers, the Clippers, the Bucks, the Nets, and the Sixers, because they have like MVP, best player on the best team level players. Well, LeBron's out. Giannis is going to be out. You got Embiid, you got Durant, you got Kawhi. If somebody else gets in, it feels like, there's going to be like this new feeling of like this new group of guys who have moved to another level.
Yeah, not only a new group of guys, but a new group of teams. I'm sure you probably saw the stat that's been passed around. Of all the teams remaining in the playoffs right now, the Sixers are the team that's won the title most recently out of all those teams. And, that I wasn't even alive in '83 when they won. So it's, all these teams that haven't even either have never been to won a title or that haven't won it in a really long time. So it's, like you said, it's a kind of a changing of the guard, new young players coming up and kind of stepping up and taking the throne, and some new teams. Finally, we're seeing some teams that we just haven't seen in this situation before.
Yeah, because you're going to see, like, I think now you're going to be like, whoa, they have Booker, they have Trae Young. You've got Donovan Mitchell. Like, because you have those guys, you can win a title. We're entering this year and entering these playoffs, Michael. I don't think we felt that way. Like, those guys just weren't ready. Maybe they are.
Yeah. To me, I picked the Nets and the Clippers going to the finals heading into the playoffs. I'm going to stick with that for right now. And I do think that the fact that they have the more seasoned guys, obviously, and, KD, Kyrie, Harden, they have the experience, Kawhi, Paul George, they have that playoff experience. I do think that will matter, but this can be kind of like the year where those other young guys that you're talking about get that experience that to build on. So like next year, they're in a better position to contend for the title.
Sixers, Hawks, 7:30, game 2, MKB. Who wins?
I mean, you got to go with the Sixers, right? I think that if they play, make some of the adjustments that we were talking about and play with the intensity that we saw them play during the last 20 minutes of that game on Sunday, that, they should be able to take care of business because they obviously don't want to go down 2-0 and lose both of the first games in Philly.
Michael Kaskey-Blomain covers the NBA for CBS Sports at The Real Mike KB, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. All right, man, we'll see you.
All right, Mike, thanks.
All right, there you go. He likes the Sixers tonight. They got to win, and I think they will as well. And you can hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. Sports Bash is brought to you by Matt Blatt Nissan, the all-new Matt Blatt Nissan. Now open, Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township, next to Home Depot. Online, mattblattnissan.com. Hey, don't forget, Sixers and Hawks, 7:30. We have the call. The only place you can hear the Sixers and the Hawks is 97.3 ESPN. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Free mobile app. Watch the show live. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Search 973 ESPN. I'm your host, Mike Gill. Here till 6. Paul Hundergar, Sixers Insider tonight for game night at 6:20. I'll have Jimmy Lynam on at 4:40 today, so we have plenty more Sixers conversation to get into. Wait till you hear these stats. So the Montreal Canadiens have won 7 straight games in the playoffs. They have not trailed at all. There are 437 minutes and 53 seconds they have not trailed in their series. Now, you might say, who cares? Hockey, Montreal. Listen to this. Even I thought, I'm not into these hockey playoffs. I haven't watched any of them, to be honest with you. Now, think about this. They are into the semifinals, a 4-game sweep of Winnipeg. First time since 2014. During the time that Montreal has not trailed in this series, these are the things that you could have done. You could watch paint dry for 8 hours. You could watch all 3 Mighty Ducks movies. You could watch the entire first 2 seasons of Seinfeld. You could drive from the Bell Center in Montreal to the Nassau Coliseum on Long Island. You could run 94 miles at a world marathon record pace. You could beat Super Mario Brothers 89 times at a world record pace. You could watch the 5-overtime 2000 Flyers-Penguins playoff game. And in all of those things, if you did them, the Canadiens would still have a lead in that series. Think about that. You went to every single game, and I'm sure you're listening to Winnipeg Sports Radio. They got to get the first goal. Montreal scores. They got to get the first goal tonight. Montreal scores. They have led the whole time. And think about this. They won 52% of their games this year in the regular season. It is the second lowest winning percentage by a team to reach the conference finals in the last 25 years. Now, you remember 2010, they were the 8th seed. They were better that year, winning 53% of their games. The Flyers beat them that year, if you remember. This is one of the worst regular season teams to make the finals, the conference finals, is this Montreal Canadiens team. It's a pretty interesting story if you're watching the hockey playoffs. It was something that stood out to me this morning. I was like, this Montreal team swept. I'm like, is it really? No, it's a little wonky this year because they had the all-Canadian division. And Montreal would typically be in the Eastern Conference. So they would be with Boston and the Islanders, which, by the way, the Islanders, that series is now, I think it's 3-2. I think the Bruins won that last night. Actually, no, the Islanders won last night. They won 5-4 in the game last night. And if they beat the Bruins, it would be their 6th series win where everything went over 5 games. So the Islanders have scored 6 power play goals on the road against the Bruins, 6 different players. That series, look, I'm not sitting here telling you that. My buddy was telling me, he's like, you watching any of this? I'm like, no, I actually haven't. He's like, my God, this series has been unbelievable. Final year of the Nassau Coliseum as the home arena. You remember they were playing at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn. They went back to the Nassau Coliseum, and this is the final year for that. All right, so there you go. A little hockey update. I thought that Canadian story, of course, it had the Flyers 5-overtime game, so it kind of stuck out to me. And I'm thinking, you could watch that whole Flyers game and basically like wire to wire. That was one of the longest nights of my life. Bucks, Nets. I want to take a look at that last night. So the Bucks last night They average 120 points a game during the regular season. It's the most by any team over the last 35 years. Now, they're playing a team that's 22nd in the league defensively. But entering this series, the ball movement was thought to be with the Nets. You know, how are they going to move the ball? Is it going to get stuck? Is it going to be a lot of ISO stuff? According to Second Spectrum, the Nets have attempted 607 passes compared to 430 from the Bucks. The Bucks are turning the ball over 2.3% of the time. This is a pretty interesting revelation that the Bucks are so tied to Giannis and what he does. Because think about this. During the regular season, both the Nets and Bucks rank in the top 6 in the league in three-point field goal percentage on catch-and-shoot attempts. In this series, the catch-and-shoot threes, the Nets 26 of 51. Milwaukee is 6 for 28. You know, Milwaukee's getting looks. They're shooting 21% from three. You know, we talk about make, miss. You lose by 39. It's not about they made more. You just flat out gave no effort. But the Bucks couldn't connect in game one either. 69% of the Bucks' three-point attempts were catch and shoot during the regular season. That's almost 50% now. That's a big drop. It's a 20% drop. The isolations is crazy. Both teams, as we know, very isolation heavy. You got Durant, you got Kyrie, and James Harden. And, of course, you got Giannis. And both of those teams, the isolations, the Nets, though, are significantly more efficient in the one-on-one in this series. And that's a credit, as I said in the first hour, to the Nets defense, which isn't getting enough credit. And the Bucks, who could be doing a much better job on the catch and shoot, they're only hitting, as we mentioned, 39%, 21%, excuse me. The Nets defense has caused problems for the Bucks. They led the NBA in switches against on ball screens during the regular season, and that defense is working here. They're doing a lot, and we might see more of Giannis as the ball handler on the pick plays. Maybe. As we said, they got to do a better job of getting Giannis to let other players accentuate the positives of other guys, because they're going to just keep asking Giannis, hey, you want to shoot it? Go for it. You want to shoot? Go for it. And I think it's a big factor. The Nets defense has been a factor in this series. There's no question about it. You got to tip your cap to them, because we all thought, man, they're a horrible defensive team. Defense is a problem. They were bad during the regular season at times. But here in the playoffs, man, it's a shame about how minimized the regular season is getting. It really is. Like, when there's that big matchup, remember when the Bucks played the Nets back-to-back games back in April? Those looked like huge games, and the Bucks won them both. And if I remember, they won them pretty handily. And you were like, this team they're legit. They just beat them twice. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. It's bad, man. It's a shame. I mean, the Nets last night, absolute domination. Meanwhile, the Suns in that game, 16-0 run, 11-0 run in the second half. I mean, they had two runs that totaled 27-0 runs. Because if you look at it, they were down double digits early in the third quarter of that game. Pretty crazy. That Suns team's pretty interesting, as we just talked about with Michael Kaskey-Blomain. They've got the veteran stabilizer in Paul. They've got the young superstar scorer in Booker. They've got a young, energetic defensive player who is making Jokic work in Ayton. And honestly, the guy who's kind of the glue to it all, is he a superstar? No. But the guy who's kind of the glue to the whole thing is Bridges. And I know Bridges, you hear that name here, and it makes you cringe. Bridges is an interesting one. The trade there on draft night was interesting because the Sixers trade Bridges to Phoenix, and of course they get back Zaire Smith. That there, you lose that deal. You lose that deal. On draft night, you say, okay, I get it. Bridges is just going to be a role player. And Bridges, he's better than a role player. He's a good player. I'm not taking anything. He's averaging 13 points a game. So he's not a game changer. He's kind of a glue guy, I think, for them. He ties in the fact that they have this point guard, they have this scorer, they have this defensive presence, and then Bridges, I think, is like the perfect key to tie them all together. But on that night, when the Sixers make that trade, right? They draft him, and then they trade him, and the 1-for-1, the draft rights to get Zaire Smith, that is a bust. It's the future first-round pick that has to be entered into that conversation. And the Sixers got that extra first-round pick. That pick turned into Tobias Harris. So the question you need to ask yourself is, would you rather Tobias Harris or Mikal Bridges? You have to say Harris, right? You have to. Bridges is a nice player, but he's not Tobias Harris. Tobias Harris is a significantly better scorer. I think Bridges is a good defensive player. But if you have to make that trade again, you would say, yeah, we got Zaire Smith back. That's a fail. They got you there. But they gave you a future first-round pick, and that first-round pick turned into Tobias Harris. It's Harris or Bridges. That's what you have to kind of weigh. People conveniently leave that part out when they talk about that trade. Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. I'm Mike Gill. Hey, glad to have you with us. If you're watching the show live, like my man Brian, who says, oh, my God, this is so much better than the app. Yeah, you can watch the show live. What's going on, Brian? How are you? Adam, are the Sixers just hoping the Hawks don't shoot the lights out, or are they going to make some adjustments? Well, I think you know the answer to that. They're going to make some adjustments. They're not going to go with the same game plan. If they do, that's a fail. That would be a fail. MKB said he thinks they're going to go with Ben Simmons to start things off. I'll ask Jimmy Lynam at 4:40 today. All right, Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, and it is brought to you this hour by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bet, take your profit. Find out how at PropSwap.com or download the Prop Swap app today. It is a very busy NFL week, by the way. Most of the teams are doing their mandatories. The Eagles, of course, opted out of the mandatories, instead trading off to have them come in last week to kind of do these 7-on-7 stuff. So they basically said, look, come in for more days and we won't make you do the mandatories. A lot of teams right now, they are doing their mandatories. So there's a lot going on. We're going to see if Aaron Rodgers decides to show up. We're going to see a lot of stories around the league. This week is a very, very busy NFL week. We'll have that covered for you here during Football 4. We got a lot of Eagles stuff today. We got a lot of other stuff. Andrew DiCecco from InsideTheBirds.com is going to join us to break down some of the things. Now that the Eagles are done here, but let me start with that, Andrew. Would you have liked to, like the way the Eagles handled this with the mandatories, they decided not to do that. Would you have made the little deal that the Eagles coaching staff decided to do with the players, or would you have rather seen them, try to get those players to do the mandatory here and get these extra days in?
Well, I think it shows Nick Sirianni's emotional intelligence, being able to gauge this team and get their perspective on things and weigh his options. And I think that's really going to go a long way in building a relationship with his players and kind of giving them that option, that variety of what to do. So I think it's ultimately a good thing.
Yeah, it's interesting because the one thing that I was interested to see out of this, Andrew, was the whole Zach Ertz thing. Like, if they had mandatories, would he have shown up, or would he have thought, you know what, I'm not going to be there, and take the fines? Like, that to me is probably the biggest story that would have come out of these mandatories here, is much like what's going on in Green Bay. Aaron Rodgers not at the start of the 3-day minicamp. Would Zach Ertz? So do you think Zach Ertz would have showed up, or do you think he would have taken the fines?
I think Zach would have probably taken the fine.
And not shown up and just said, you know what, I'm going to wait for you guys to trade me. Like, do you feel there's no shot that he plays and comes back here?
I feel it's a very slim chance that he returns and plays the season here. I think that there's going to be a number of suitors late in the summer that are going to want his services. Zach, like I said, Zach can still play at a high level. He's coming off a down year, but it's going to be a very nice piece to a team that's close to contention. And getting a player like him who has such a knack for finding the zones, finding the soft spot in the zones, soft hands, just a smart player, very, very proficient route runner. Those type of players don't grow on trees. And I think that there's going to be some of those teams, possibly like we said, the Chargers and the like, that are going to, the Cardinals, the Panthers, that are going to be interested in his services.
All right, so a lot of rankings this time of the year. I want to get your take on a bunch of this stuff here. Andrew DiCecco, Football 4. Now, over at InsideTheBirds.com this week, you wrote about what's happening at left tackle, which we discussed a little bit on Friday, but you wrote about that this week. I want to go a little bit further because Pro Football Focus ranked the Eagles' offensive line unit as a whole as the 17th offensive line. And they said this is generally one of the top offensive lines in recent years, but the injuries have taken their toll, putting them in the middle of the pack. Let me get your take on where this unit, in your mind, can be if they stay healthy. If this group stays together, Lane Johnson, Brandon Brooks, Sayamala, Kelsey, and then whoever plays that left tackle spot, how good can this offensive line be?
Well, I think it can be one of the league's best if everyone stays healthy. And obviously, there's going to be a big determining factor will be who wins that left tackle job. Right now, my vote would go to Jordan Mailata. He's recency bias perhaps, but we've seen what he can do. He looks like a player that's very much ascending, has a much higher ceiling, has the size, the tenacity, and just the overall. Just he plays to the main streak, and he can handle a wide array of pass rushers. I mean, there's just a lot of upside with him. So I think that if you plug him in at left tackle, I mean, I do think that that's a very complete offensive line all the way through. And Jeff Stoutman obviously is the best offensive line coach in football, and it's a veteran offensive line. Outside of that, whoever wins that left tackle job. So I think it can be one of the league's best for sure.
Yeah, and you wrote about Dillard and Mailata over at InsideTheBirds.com. Dillard took 337 snaps as a rookie, missed all season due to injury. So I don't know that we know what he's going to be. I know we've talked a little bit about what you thought about him coming out of the draft, but he obviously has a new focus and said, I missed a whole season due to injury, never happened before, and now he has a new fire. So that'll be interesting. But what did you see from Mailata last year, who becomes a very interesting and intriguing part, because if you found a left tackle in round number 7 who can play left tackle for the next, 10 years, that's a really fine. Mm-hmm. So what did you see from Mailata last year that is intriguing and exciting?
Well, I thought his footwork was very nifty for a big guy. I thought that when he kind of figured out what the opposition was doing as far as a pass rush approach, he was able to kind of counter that and figure that out. I know he's a guy that watches a lot of film, and that shows on the field. He got better each week, and it's just a very for a player who's only played the game of professional football for 3 years. I mean, he looks remarkable. It's just a remarkable story of development. I mean, Jeff Stoutland's done a phenomenal job with him. But I also wrote, you got to give Mailata a lot of credit for putting in the practice time, both on the field and off the field in the film room, because last season in his 10 starts, he looked like you wouldn't be able to tell that he was just a few years removed from being a professional rugby player.
Andrew, I mean, and you wrote about the fact that he's 6'8", 346 pounds. I liken him to like Joel Embiid. Like, here's a guy 7'2", 280 pounds. He shouldn't be able to do some of the things he does. It's almost like Mailata is that gifted in terms of his athleticism and abilities at that size. It's like, did the Eagles kind of find, I don't want to say an all-pro level guy, but did they kind of, fall into a guy that might be, a 10-year player at that position after drafting Dillard in the first round?
Yeah, it's quite possible. I mean, when you take a player, I believe he went to 200, he was the 233rd overall pick in the 2018 draft. When you take a player like that, you're drafting a player on traits and potential upside. You're taking a flyer. And he had the measurables, the athletic traits that teams look for. And you figure, hey, we can pair him with a good offensive line coach. Let's see what this guy becomes. And I don't know that if they ever thought, maybe they thought, yeah, he can be a competent backup. I don't know if they ever envisioned him being a starting left tackle in year 4. But, I mean, here we are. I mean, and that's a credit to, like I said, Jeff Stoutland and the work that Jordan put in on and off the field, because it really is an incredible story of development.
By the way, what pick did you say he was?
I think he was 33.
Man, you nailed that one. 7th round, pick 233. Andrew DiCecco gets it right on the nose. Let me ask you about left guard. Do you think Seumalo is black markered in there, or is that an open spot, open competition? We know that word is big, competition. Mm-hmm. Is Landon Dickerson and Seumalo in a battle for left guard?
Well, you'd like to think that, because Nick Sirianni's preached the word competition, but a lot of it has to do with where Landon Dickerson's at as far as a physical standpoint. I don't know if the Eagles are going to want to rush him into that and give him, overload him with all these reps and everything. Kind of maybe want to gradually ease him into the flow of the professional ranks. I think early on it's going to be Seumalo's job to lose, and he'd be the player that if he starts to struggle on that line, becomes a weak link, then all of a sudden you might see Landon Dickerson and early in the season get a little bit of time in there, or possibly just overtake him. But I think it's going to be Isaac's job to lose.
By the way, the PFF rankings have the Eagles, as we mentioned, in the middle of the pack at 17. The worst offensive line in football, the New York Football Giants. So when we're talking about the NFC East, keep that in mind, right, Andrew? If your offensive line's a mess, your chances of having a solid season typically are not very good. Would you concur that the Giants have one of the worst, if not the worst, offensive line in football?
Yeah, it seems like perennially they have one of the worst offensive lines in football, along with Cincinnati Bengals, the Arizona Cardinals. There's a number of teams that are like that. The Minnesota Vikings. But yeah, like you said, offensive line is paramount to success. If you can have all of the all-pro guys that you want from a skill player standpoint, but if your quarterback doesn't have time to get rid of the football and serve and see the field, and he's constantly running for his life and flushed out of the pocket, I don't know how successful you're going to be as an offense.
Yeah. By the way, Washington came in at 16, and interestingly enough, Dallas came in at number 6. Dallas was a team that had a lot of offensive line injuries last year. They finished 27th in offensive line rankings, but they think they're going to have a bounce. If Dallas has a good offensive line and you have Dak back, and I think their wide receiving core, which we'll get to, was the number 2 rated wide receiver, Dallas has the opportunity or the potential, Andrew, to have a very good offense this year.
Yeah, they do, and obviously health is going to be key with that because they struggle with that. And I think Dak Prescott is a very good quarterback. I think that he's shown that in his time that he's been out there. I think he showed tremendous growth in each year, and he just has a good command for that offense. I don't know that he's ever going to be in the MVP conversation, but he's just a very solid quarterback and sort of elevates the players around him. Now, they did a great job of putting a lot of pieces in there for that offense to go. And we don't really know. Ezekiel Elliott has a lot of mileage on him for such a young running back. I think he's 25 years old, but he's just really accumulated a ton of carries. And last season, he really was that offense. And you worry about the overuse there. You wonder how quickly that flame is going to sort of burn out. But, I mean, the pieces are there for them to have a really successful offense.
Philadelphia wide receiver room. PFF ranked them 30th in the league. That's basically third from the bottom. The only 2 teams they had ranked worse was Detroit and Houston. And they really did say, though, that there's plenty of room to improve for this unit. But if you, at the end of the year, Andrew, I say you had the 30th ranked wide receiver room, that's probably indicative that this group did not develop very much.
Yes, I think that's fair. But you have to look at guys like, that's not really surprising that they ranked all the way down there. But I mean, you have Jalen Reagor, who we've outlined was completely misutilized last season. Didn't really play to standard when he did opportunity down the field. Looked very much like a rookie, sort of a fish out of water at times. And Travis Fulgham flashed, and then he sort of disappeared. He was dealing with an injury, and Greg Ward was their top receiver. And Greg Ward is a 10, 11-yard move the chains type of receiver. He's not a downfield threat. He's just more of a short area possession guy. I mean, and then I had a couple of rookies who were thrown in there, and John Hightower was thrown in there way earlier than he probably should have been, just given the amount of talent around him. I think he was kind of thrown in the deep end, and it seemed to be swimming, so to speak, and he lost his confidence. And then that opened the door for Klose Watkins to step in there, and he did all right in a limited capacity. So there's a lot of young players there and a lot of unknown variables, but I think this season their upside, they have some upside. There's continuity there with wide receiver coach Aaron Moorhead. So we'll see what happens.
Let me ask you this. John Hightower, J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who adds more?
Well, I think when you look at what John Hightower is, he's a speed guy, but of course Watkins is also a speed guy. They don't have a lot of size, and I think that J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, in theory, Mike, is the red zone guy that they need. And let's see what they can get out of JJ. I think that he brings more. He brings more. There's what he has. The Eagles receiving core doesn't necessarily have. There's a lot of guys that can do what John Hightower can do, and he's also John Hightower's not that young. I think he's 25 years old. He came in the league at 24. I think Klose Watkins is a better version of John Hightower.
Are you a believer in Travis Fulgham?
Yes, because you don't do what he did for a month straight by accident, right? I mean, he was beating really high-level NFL defensive backs, finding openings against the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are a very hard-nosed defense, the Ravens. I mean, he made some plays out there, and it wasn't like he was putting up these numbers against the Bengals secondary or anything like that. He was very impressive for a guy who plays sparingly with the Detroit Lions. He's a former 6th-round pick, discarded. Was on, I think the Eagles were his 3rd team last summer. So, I mean, he really stepped in there, and it's sort of like the light just came on for him, and he was in his zone, and he had that continuity with Carson Wentz. And then I think hit there when Alshon Jeffrey came back. he sort of faded to the background, and he was also dealing with an injury. So I think that kind of all transpired right around the same time, which led to him sort of being a non-entity towards the season.
All right, so we think Zach Ertz is going to be gone. Part of the receiver room is the tight ends. You have Dallas Goedert. Kind of give me your thoughts on Goddard as a receiving threat next to Ertz. Who is a, you look at Ertz and say, Goddard can't be better than the best pass-catching tight end in Eagles history, but can he?
Yeah, I think he can, but health is going to be a prominent factor here with Dallas Goedert. He gets nicked up a lot. The way that he plays the game is a lot more physical and wears on your body a lot more than the way Zach Ertz played. Zach Ertz played a more finesse, but a savvier game where he didn't really expose himself to too many hits. He wasn't the blocker that Dallas Goedert is. He didn't really have a whole lot of after the catch production. Dallas Goedert's going to run through somebody, stiff arm guys, attack the football in the air, be a red zone guy. That's his game. And when you play his style of game, his style of play, you're kind of going to expose yourself to some injuries. So I think the only thing holding him back is going to be, the injuries and things like that.
All right, these guys here, who intrigues you of this group? Jason Kroom, Tyree Jackson, Hakeem Butler.
None.
I thought you were going to give me Butler only because
if I had to pick one, I would say Hakeem Butler though.
You would go Butler of that group?
Yeah, if I had to pick one, but that's what my crew a trio of tight ends. I think they need to sign Richard Rodgers.
Yeah, it feels like Butler was a guy who was a wide receiver, big guy. I liked him a lot at Iowa State. It's a shame that
Me too, yeah.
He just hasn't really transformed into it. So that Eagles wide receiver room is interesting. You said Fulgham, and we'll leave with this. And there's so many notes on my page here that we never got to today, but such is life. Greg Ward. Does he have as big a role this year as he's had the last 2 years, or is he kind of phased out a little bit of this offense?
I think he's going to be phased out, Mike. I think by necessity, he had a much bigger role because he was one of the only receivers that the quarterbacks could count on to get open, catch the football, move the chains. Greg Ward is a very, very technically savvy route runner, has a knack for finding the soft spots in the zone. He was a quarterback, obviously, so he sees the game a little bit differently. And I think that he had that familiarity and he was always on the same page with the quarterback. So I think that's why he had such a big role. Now, I think they would like for Jalen Reagor to have a much larger role. Obviously, you have Devontae Smith now in the picture, who I think is going to be a volume guy, could have 70 catches if healthy. Travis Fulgham, I think, is going to be he's going to have a full season now, probably as a top 3 guy on that receiving core. So, there's other guys there. So I think Greg Ward is going to be more of a complementary piece than a focal point.
All right. I'll leave you with this because I haven't talked to you since the Julio Jones trade, but he's in Tennessee now. What does that do for that offense?
It completely – now you're going to see a less conservative Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill has a good arm, a strong arm, and they really need to let him, take that offense to the next level and uncork some deep heaves down the field and take advantage of his strengths. Julio Jones is a strong wide receiver that can create separation down the field, come up with these contested catches. You have A.J. Brown there, obviously. They complement each other very well. And then they also have Josh Reynolds, who's going to play the slot. Josh Reynolds is a very underrated wide receiver as well. That was a good addition to their offense. I just think you're going to see a little bit more explosive Tennessee Titans offense that's not going to lean on Derrick Henry as much as they have in past years.
Should be interesting. I was going to say, this is a team that was just almost, I don't want to say strictly a running team, but heavily relied on the run. You probably see a lot better balance out of that team, and we'll see what their defense looks like. That's where they really got let down last year. So very intriguing trade with Julio Jones now in Tennessee. Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. A new podcast drops Thursday morning at 6 a.m. Jeff Mosher is here tomorrow. Adam's here on Thursday, and Andrew's back on Friday. And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline. There's always football to talk about 24/7, 365, and we have it for you on Football at 4. Thanks, Andrew.
You got it, Mike. Take care.
All right, he's back on Friday. We'll do more NFL. The PFF rankings are out. Always fun to break them down. Take a look at what they think of the Eagles wide receivers now at 973ESPN.com. We'll have the list of all the stuff up as the units are getting graded by PFF. Go to 973ESPN.com. Always good fodder for the offseason. Matisse Thybulle says he feels the Sixers took a breath after the round one win. Well, that's not good to hear. We'll talk about that and more coming up with Jim Lynam at 4:40 today. But when we come back, do you remember? These are events that happen in sports on June the 8th. We'll have that list coming up next here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And don't forget, you can watch the show live video, streaming, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Or go to 973ESPN.com. Watch it on your smartphone, your smart TV, through the YouTube app. There's a whole bunch of ways that people are watching the show. Make that move and watch the show live. You can comment on the live stream, and we'll react to them in real time here on the Sports Bash. All right, do you remember Larry Bird and a huge move in football? Coming up. right, 427. Jimmy Lynam in about 8 minutes from now. Stick around for that. I should say about 13 minutes from now. My timing was off a tad. All right, do you remember? These are things that happened on this day, June the 8th. Josh Henning's my producer. These are all events that happened on this day, June the 8th. Here we go. All right, do you remember, Joshua, 1966, the 47-year-old NFL and the 7-year-old AFL agreed to merge into a single league with 26 teams in 25 cities in 1970. The unified schedule won't take place until 1970 because of a separate multi-million-dollar television contract. But 1966, on this day, the merger. Of course, you don't remember. You weren't alive.
No, I wasn't, but I do distinctly remember hearing and reading multiple times that depending on which side of the argument you were on determined of who's really benefited from that initially, because there were some people who were saying that Brazil was trying to stave off a lawsuit from the AFL.
See, I think it would be cool if there was an AFL and like an ABA that were highly competitive to the NFL and the NBA still going on right now. Don't you? Like if we had like Philadelphia Eagles and the Philadelphia Stars and they were like 30 years established and we loved them just as much as we loved the Eagles, and there was a Philadelphia ABA team and we loved them just as much as we loved the Sixers, and you just had them in different seasons. Like you would have these constant, you know what I mean?
It would certainly be
too much.
It would be interesting, but it would have to be something that had been around for a very long time.
Right, like if the USFL
never went
away and it was still established, and here we are 30 years or whatever later.
Or like if the ABA was still around, the Nets were still in the ABA.
Correct.
Like then I could see it, but anything beyond that, I didn't know. Because you need there to be people
like we're never going to get into the XFL.
Right.
But unless, I mean, I don't know, if the XFL, let's say like the original one that started in 2001 was still going and it never went away, and now would be in the 20th year.
Maybe.
You know?
The only reason why I say maybe is because here's the problem. I find that people are such creatures of habit.
Yeah.
That they need something to be around for 20, 30, 40, 50 years for them to accept it.
You're a big college football fan.
Yes.
It's kind of different because none of the Division I teams ended up moving to the spring. But were you into the college football in the spring at all?
You know, it's funny. I
just played like the Division I.
Yeah, the FCS National Championship game.
Yeah, I didn't watch any of it. I didn't even know about it.
Here's what happened to me. I was like, I'm going to watch this. I'm going to be into this. And I just never got into it.
I watched the XFL.
I tried the college football in the spring, and I find myself becoming more and more like viewing it as like a casual, like if I'm near the TV.
What if it was like the Big Ten or the Pac-12? If the Pac-12 said, look, we're COVID, we're moving to the spring. That's it.
Well, you know what ruined it for me? What ruined it for me was the fact that I was really into the AAF and the return of the XFL. Like I was watching those games every week, every Saturday. I was there. I think because of the off schedules of COVID for the NBA and the NHL and college basketball, it ruined my attention span for spring football.
Yeah, I watched a little of the XFL, but it was more like, hey, it's spring. I'm out like, I might be out bar hopping or something like, grabbing a brewski on a Saturday afternoon and they have a football game on. Not like I'm sitting in my house and watching it. More that way of watching it than, you know what I mean?
I got you.
Like if you just happen to be out on a Saturday, it's a nice day. You know, I remember last year I was riding the bike on the boardwalk and, you pop in to the beer garden up there or something, and they have a football game on, and it's because it's a nice day. I don't think I'd be sitting on my house on a nice day watching that game. But the merger happened today, 1966. 20 years later, Larry Bird posted a triple-double against the Rockets, clinching the Celtics' 16th NBA title. He earns NBA Finals MVP honors to go along with the regular season MVP. I mean, I don't think people understand how great Larry Bird really was. But He was really good.
People don't appreciate Bird because it happened before Jordan, and people act like Jordan was the only old guy who was ever good.
Well, yeah, you had Magic and Larry that came in. They really saved the league.
Right.
That happened.
But the 80s were full of great players. I mean, Dr. J was still hanging around. Moses Malone was league MVP.
He wasn't just hanging around. He was dominating.
Well, you know what I mean. Like he was a holdover from the previous decade.
By the way, did you hear what Michael Kaskey-Blomain said today?
He said a lot of things.
The Sixers, of all the teams left, have won the championship most recently.
That's correct, 1983.
That is unbelievable. I did not realize that until he just said it.
Yeah, half the teams left in the postseason have never won a championship.
Utah, Phoenix, Denver, Clippers have never won.
Correct. There's another one.
Brooklyn.
There you go.
Atlanta won back in like the 60s.
They were the St. Louis Hawks.
Correct. And Milwaukee. I mean, they won back with Lou Alcindor.
Yep, 71.
And they won. No, that's the last time they won. So obviously, because the Sixers are in '83.
Yep.
Wow.
Crazy, right?
Yes. Somebody's going to win a championship that hasn't won since at least 1983. That's unbelievable.
Or just never won altogether.
Or hasn't won altogether. There's a lot of those.
Which is pretty much the whole Western Conference.
Steven Strasburg struck out 14. Giancarlo Stanton, 3 for 5. Both made their major league debuts on this day in 2010. Who's better?
Strasburg or
Stanton?
I mean, I would go with Strasburg only because he's been injured a little tiny bit less than Stanton.
I'll take the pitcher.
And he actually
that Yankees team's a disaster.
And it's because of his contract.
Disaster.
His contract has doomed them. People talk about firing Cashman up there.
People want to get Boone fired, too.
Yeah, well, people want to fire the manager no matter what he does.
2002, Lennox Lewis knocks out Mike Tyson in the 8th round at the Pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee. The fight was moved to Memphis after Tyson started a brawl at the press conference announcing the bout. Nevada and many other states refused to give Tyson a boxing license before Memphis bid $12 million to host the fight. Tennessee granted him the license. I can't believe that was in 2002. I remember watching that fight as if it was like the other day. Tyson was like a nut promoting that fight, but the night of the fight, he turned into like this sympathetic figure.
Right.
He's like this old-looking guy staring up.
This giant.
Oh man, it was like he's on his back and he just kept getting up, and you're like, oh man, Mike Tyson looks old. Like that was the first time. There were other times when he just looked like whatever. He looked old that night, but he just took the beat. He took the ass beating, and that was like, dude, I respect this guy. He doesn't need to do this, and he took an ass beating that night. Lennox Lewis kicked his ass that night.
That was also the moment that you realized it was the end of the heavyweights. It was the end of the era where you really cared about the heavyweight champion.
All right, last one, 93. Michael Jordan scored 31. Bulls beat the Suns 100-92 at the American West Arena. Game 1 of the NBA Finals. A moment of silence is observed before the game for Nets guard Drazen Petrovic, who was killed in a car wreck 2 days earlier. It was on this day in 93 that Jordan and the Bulls beat the Suns.
Drazen Petrovic would have been the greatest European player in NBA history if he did not die in that accident. He would have been better than Dirk, would have been better than all of them.
Last one. Rodriguez, A-Rod, hit his 400th career home run on this day in 2005.
Should he be in the Hall of Fame?
A-Rod? Yes, absolutely. Okay. No question. Coming up next, the coach, Jimmy Lynam. All right, Sixers tonight, right here on 97.3 ESPN. It's coming up, 7:30. Tom McGinnis has the call right here on 97.3 ESPN. We'll have all the action, and they'll have all the pregame action. NBC Sports Philadelphia still doing pre- and post-game with Andy Fadul, Mark Jackson, and this man, the coach, Jimmy Lynam, as he is set to join me here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline, taking a look at Game 2, a couple things back at Game number 1 that the Sixers can make adjustments on. And, Coach, we always hear that term, it's a make or miss league. They made 23s the other night. How can the Sixers prevent Atlanta from making 23s again? Because they were getting some wide open looks in that game, but part of it is you got to get the ball out of Young's hands, which gives you some open looks. So what are some of the things that Doc Rivers and his staff are talking about for Game 2 tonight?
Well, you just summed up the dilemma, Mike. I believe you're right. You have to get the ball out of Trae Young's hands more frequently than the Sixers did the first half. That's number one. He wasn't an all-star the first half. He was all-world. That's how good his first half was. They had 23s for the game. They had 13 at the half. Trae Young had 25 points at the half. When they finally started the second half, they brought him back to earth. 3 for 10 field goals, three turnovers. At the half, I mean, he had 7 assists. He had 1 turn, 25 points. But the price you're going to pay, I mean, I know people that say, oh, look, they're getting these wide open looks. Anytime you trap a ball on one, the other team knows what they're doing. They're going to get an open look. It's that simple. It's called playing the trap. It's like when Joel Embiid. It's ironic in this sense. You know how the Sixers play. They throw the ball to Joel Embiid a lot. He's good enough. If you single cover him, he's on his way to 50. If you double cover him, he throws it out, and that's when the Sixers play the 3-ball game. Well, you ready? Atlanta does the exact same thing, except the guy they do it with is 6'1", and maybe weighs 170 pounds.
It's unbelievable. And you're right. I mean, look, he doesn't get a lot of moments in this type of atmosphere where they don't get a lot of time on national TV, but we're finding out how special he is. I said before this series, to me, what doesn't get talked about a lot, Coach, is he averages almost 10 assists a game. That tells you not only does he score, he sees the whole floor, and that's where I think this team, Philadelphia, is having some problems because he sees the open man.
Well, there's no question. You're hitting it right on the head. I actually started counting, and I started laughing because I stopped. Mike, he has the ball in his hands virtually every – that's number one. And I'm going to say, so I my bet, on 85% of those possessions, they set at least one pick for him. So all this nonsense about he did this to Danny Green. Yeah, it's not about football, Jim. And I'll give you, Simmons is a better defender than Danny Green. Matisse Thybulle is. That's not the issue. If Mike Gill set the pick on Ben Simmons, who's guarding Trae Young, you ready? Trae Young is loose. It's not about Ben Simmons at that point. It's about helps Ben Simmons. That's the whole design pick and roll defense. What are you willing to do to get this ball out of this kid's hands? In the first half, the Sixers did it 0 times. In the second half, they did it pretty good, and that's going to be the big adjustment.
So, Coach, does Doc go back to Danny Green tonight to start things off and just see how far he goes, and maybe the leash is shorter? Does he go right to Ben? We know Ben, they don't want to get him in foul trouble. Young's a master at drawing fouls. Or does he do something drastic and start Matisse Thybulle over Green?
Yeah, any one of those three, I'm fine with whatever he wants to do. I know the world go crazy if you see Danny Green guard them on. I like your first one, I think. I'd play Danny Green off and give him a short leash. But you're dead on. This kid knows I think this is right. And if I'm wrong, I'm only off a couple spots. Joel Embiid shoots the most free throws in this league. You ready? Trae Young is number 2.
Unbelievable.
If he's not 2, he's 4. He has an ability. He knows how to get in. I got left. All the people said, did you see that call? And so how many calls do you want to moan about? You want to moan about 2 calls? The kid had the ball 80 times, and you're going to talk about 2 calls? Please.
you see Ben a lot, and I know you said with me last time we talked, Coach, is that Ben to you is the Defensive Player of the Year. I think Scotty Brooks said he's the Defensive Player of the Year. So if you have the best defensive player in the league, do you put him on their best offensive player? I mean, is that
here's what I would say to you. You brought up the point to me, and you're absolutely correct. I don't want him getting in foul trouble. I would like that. Here's how I'll say it. I would like for Ben, I don't want this team loose like we let them loose the other night down 26. I'd like to have that club in my bag late game. 3 minutes to go. If this is a close game, I want Ben Simmons available to guard this kid, Trae Young, then. I don't want to necessarily come out, mid-first quarter, all the second quarter. No, I don't need that. And the other thing, let me just give you the flip side of a coin. You got to make Trae Young work. He's not a top-level defender. Make it work on defense. I don't care who he's guarding. If he's guarding Matisse Thybulle, run Thybulle off some screens. Because even if Trae Young is not going to guard, really commit to guard Matisse, and even if Matisse doesn't want to shoot it, at least Trae Young has to run around, and coming off the screen, you got a chance to bang him. I put the defensive end and gave him a free pass.
How would you describe? I don't want to. I say this, and I don't. Not that I'm. But would you say that Joel Embiid against this Hawks offense is a liability on defense?
No, absolutely not. No, Mike, it's a scheme. Tell him what you want him to do.
Gotcha.
He decided he was going to play soft like that the first quarter with scheme. They don't want Trae Young, getting to the rim and getting unfortunately, bad decision, fellas. I'm not saying you can't play Embiid like that on occasion.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to use. I don't know football, but I'm a big football fan. I know this. The defense coordinators, one of the priorities going into a game, okay? To confuse the quarterback. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Well, that's what this league is about now.
Yep.
You can't use your grandpa's defense to guard this stuff. You must confuse Trae Young a little bit. Are you going to blow him up with a hard trap and beat out of the? Did you see him trap the ball? You let him. That's like a panther coming out of a cage.
Yeah.
Please.
And I bring this up only because, you heard some people say, well, he's been a liability on defense. And I say, well, he's a liability, but I don't hear people asking to get him off the floor. Because even if he was a liability, you want him on the floor.
No, I understand what people see. They see him soft. Trae Young goes up and either shoots a three or makes the little floater. If you don't want him to get that, then tell the big guy, you're up on that little guy. And whether you trap him or not, that's another story. I mean, there's a lot of subtleties, that the guy in the stands, it's like me watching football. I don't understand line play or what have you. It's nothing to do with Embiid's ability or Danny Green getting bumped over. Danny Green guarded Trae Young flat out one-on-one, maybe 3 times the whole game.
Yeah.
Pick and rolls. It's the offense of choice now in this league.
Oh, absolutely. And when you see nine turnovers in that first quarter, what was that a product of? Anything Atlanta's doing, or just sloppy? Come out sloppy? No,
I have to say the last. To be honest with you, and you're also citing a big point. What happens with a game like this when the other team, Atlanta in this case, is having their way offensively? And you're like kind of groping, trying to figure it out. I'm talking about sitting there on the bench. Like, what we do here, man, this team is on fire. Well, now you compound it with 9 turnovers the first half. Are you kidding? Come on, do the math.
Yeah.
4 times 9, if you kept that rate up, you turn it over 36 times. The average team turns it over 12 for a game. Come on.
Well, and again, I opened this up, Coach, by saying, hey, they hit 23s. They needed every bit of 23s to close that game out. I don't know that you make 23s again as poorly as the Sixers. Now, the Sixers played poorly in that game. They lose by 4. But is that more of a product that, hey, you're up by 26, you took the foot off the gas, or did the Sixers make some adjustments and make some changes that they can build off of?
Both of your points are true. The Sixers made some good adjustments. They got much more aggressive. They turned them. I thought the defensive heat was real good the second half. But, yes, Atlanta did take their foot off the pedal. I'm laughing because I couldn't believe it happened. It was an 8-point game with 14 seconds. Nate McMillan, for Lord knows what reason. I think he was being a little cute and sending a subtle message to Ben, okay? He took a hack He had an 8-point lead with 14 seconds. It was over.
Right.
But you know what set the stage? Ben made the first, missed the second, rebound Embiid, up Embiid, foul, Embiid foul shot. All that now sends you into a full court press off the foul shot. Steal that off a trap and then look that up. It's a 2-point game, please. So don't tell me how they rallied to 2. Are you kidding me?
Right, absolutely. No, you're right about that. All right, so I joke with you often when you're on is when I remember you coaching the Sixers, it was the 5 starters and Ron Anderson. I don't know that I can name another guy that played. Ron Anderson was the only guy I can remember that came off the bench.
Well, all right, I'm going to jog your memory, and you will remember Scotty Brooks.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't feel like Ron Anderson got major normal minutes.
No, he was legit. I got you. He was a legit 6-man. No, but Scotty Brooks was a part of that team.
He was.
He gave me a very high and Matisse.
Yes.
Max kind of, energy.
Yep.
He's coming into the game all over the place.
But that it feels like you, and a lot of teams, not just you, but you guys kept it tight. They're playing a 5-man bench lineup. He's going 11. I see the Nets last night playing 8 guys. I mean, does he have to reconsider that?
Well, yeah, maybe. I predicted he would play 10 or 11 in the first couple games. I'm sorry, last series. Normally, coaches will start to tighten it up a little bit. And quite honestly, it's based on performance. I got news for you. If Jake Milton was playing the way he played the last year's playoffs, getting floor time. He's not giving it to you.
Right.
So all of a sudden, he vanishes from the rotation. That's you look your players right in the eye and tell them, look, I have no magic number. I know the world thinks you only play 8. It depends how many guys are going to go out and contribute. Max right now, I mean, he's going to be in there. He deserves to be in there.
He does, yeah.
These Seibel's in there. Dwight Howard's in there. But Korkmaz I thought Korkmaz did a decent job the other night. If he can make a couple of his shots, he'll get some floor time.
Yeah, George Hill, too. I mean, he's a guy that I guess they got to, for a little stretch. It's crazy, though, to say Shake Milton was the 4th highest scorer on this team, and he's out of the rotation, essentially.
You're right, but that's how poorly he's playing.
Unbelievable.
I mean, you have to – what have you done for me tomorrow? I tell these guys right from the get. That's the world we live in, fellas. I know it's grammatically incorrect. I'll repeat. What have you done for me tomorrow?
I want to finish with this because I thought Tobias Harris is such a factor for this team. And in game 4 against Washington, I thought he reverted back to last year a little. He looked indecisive. Game 5 against Washington, back to decisive. Last game, I thought you got a mix of him. What did you see from Tobias?
Yeah, I think that's fair. He was okay. he was decent. But you'd like to say when you need it, you got to get that a little bit more.
Right.
You need Mike. What this? Everybody's saying, "Are we in trouble? Are we this?" My response is real simple. I think this team is really good. They've been really good all year long. I know who they are, and I think they are better in this series. I think they'll win this series. But you can't be on pins and needles every time. To win a championship, here's what it means. Everybody knows this, but I'm going to repeat it. It means you beat whoever they put in front of you.
Yeah.
And it means every one of those guys you beat. That's what winning a championship means. And you ready? If you're not good enough, beat somebody who's in front of you, in whatever 7-game series is, you ready? It means you're not good enough to win a championship. And conversation. That's it.
Coach, you know this. In Philly, the Sixers could win 3 games and lose 1, and they are the team that lost 1 game more so than they are that won 3 games, right?
Correct.
That's the way it goes in this town, unfortunately. But, hey, we'll see tonight. The adjustments, they need to be much more off the jump into that game. It seemed that they were not into that game. And Matisse even said it. Hey, maybe we burst our bubble in that first game a little bit. But, Coach, I could talk about this series and hoops with you all day for the rest of this show, but I know you got to get going and get ready for NBC Sports and the crew tonight for pre and post game. So I appreciate it, and hopefully we can do this again soon.
Anytime, Mike,
I appreciate it. Coach Jimmy Lynam here on the Sports Bash, and he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. We got the Sixers and the Hawks with Tom McGinnis at 7:30. You'll hear all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. Isn't the coach great? You can talk hoops with that man the rest of the day. the rest of the night. We should do like a live in-game Coach Jimmy Lynam on the radio watching the game live, how he would be watching the game. That would be a cool radio segment, wouldn't it? Appreciate the coach as always. And don't forget, we got you covered tomorrow with the recap. Paul Hudrick at 3:20. Day Tuesday with Thompson. The PT's here. Pete Thompson, former sports director of NBC 40. What's so funny about that, Pete Thompson? Isn't that what one of your former jobs was? Isn't that how? Okay, wouldn't that be how most people know Pete Thompson?
Yeah, it's just each day and each year that goes by, fewer and fewer remember that station existed. So I just always have a little. I have a little smile, you know.
Pete Thompson, the guy on TV. Like most people don't even know that the station's off the air. They still say, "Oh, Pete Thompson, you're the guy on TV." People can watch you. They just said, "Oh, you're the guy on TV."
There was a full year every single day. People were like, "What happened? Where did it go?" You know, I mean, we're talking a long time now. You know, it's just funny to me. I mean, obviously, the age group that I teach, they have no idea. They have no clue. But they don't watch any news. I mean, they would have no
Pete Thompson. Like when they say Pete Thompson, the guy on the radio.
No, not as much. Although people do acknowledge, like, you know, I recognized your voice. You know, they used to say I recognize you. Now they say I recognize your voice. But you know, hey, look, as long as they're watching. I had somebody the other day ask me about Dan and Michelle, you know, all out of like kind of left field, or, you know, of all places, we were in Tuckerton. We weren't even like, you know, we were a little bit farther north, and we were in Tuckerton. And the minute I got out of the car, the guy did the double take, you know, and that used to be an everyday occurrence. And then for that to happen, I think that was Sunday, like Sunday evening, for a guy to kind of do that next snap and be like, hey, isn't that, you know, yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is Pete Thompson. There he is, the former sports director of NBC 40.
It works. And you are the current program director of 97.3 ESPN. And, you know, the man. What do you got going on there? What is this, yellow and blue and gray? And
you know what? I put this shirt on, and then I got here. You know what's funny? It's like on the video now, I see the shirt in the video, and I'm like, I don't like this shirt. I don't, you know. Like when I left my house today, I'll show you why I have this shirt on, okay? I'm going to stand. Right. I have blue shorts on.
Oh, sure. Yeah. So you got to go right off the.
So I need a shirt that would match the blue shorts. And I don't have what color matches blue shorts? Like,
okay, reds or grays. Yeah, red or gray, or
I don't own a lot of, or like
maroon. Or maroon. Yeah.
So I wore maroon yesterday.
Yeah. What else would match? I suppose blue shorts. You could wear an orange, but you know, I don't think you want to look like. Well, maybe you're supporting the Flyers in the off season. Who knows?
Got a ton of orange shirts just stuffed in my drawer.
You're a huge Clemson fan. Who knew? You really love the Tennessee Vols. Who knew?
I was limited on options, and I put this shirt on when I left my house, and I actually had a different shirt on. You know, I had a shirt on. It was a white West Virginia polo. It's so big on me, and I showed my girlfriend, and I said, does this shirt look too big? She looked at me like a curious dog. Like, are you really asking me whether that shirt? It was like down to my knees.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about white. White is a good choice. You know, I have a couple white, you know. It's not a good choice if you're having a meatball sandwich for lunch or you're eating like chicken parm. But
too big. So I changed to this one, and I showed her this. She said, oh, that looks good. And then I saw it when I got on the video today, and I'm like, this doesn't look good.
Right. I mean, it was out of, you know, it doesn't have any logos on it. I don't see any WVU. I don't see any Sixers, you know.
Gold.
Yeah, but it's not even the true blue and gold. That's not a navy blue, right? Is it?
It's navy.
Oh, maybe it's my monitor.
Well, by the way, we just had Coach Lynam on, and he was excellent.
I love Coach Lynam. God, you know, you could learn so much about basketball just by listening to him talk. He's just the best.
Yeah. Well, he was excellent today, and you didn't get to hear him, but he said some things that were interesting, and one of them is he said that he would play Danny Green because I gave him three options.
Okay.
Everybody's going crazy. You can't play Danny Green. Why not Ben Simmons on Trae Young? And he said he would play Danny Green but have a shorter leash. Because I said, would you play Danny Green with a shorter leash, Ben Simmons, but you run the risk of him getting into foul trouble early in the game, or you sit Green and start Thibault?
Huh. and he chose the short leash. That's interesting that, and him being old school, then I guess that he's subscribing to the theory of he can't be much worse. Maybe the guy has some.
Think that it was Green that was as big of a problem as not enough help.
Okay, and that makes sense. Basketball is the one sport where there's you need support. You need to run double teams of people. You're always picking your poison of who you're going to leave open. Obviously, on the other side, the Hawks tried everything they could to try and slow down Joel Embiid, and even with not a full meniscus, the guy was dominant. I mean, he was unbelievable.
By the way, real quick, this guy texted in white shirt. Duh. Well, of course I know a white shirt goes, but if you haven't noticed, we're a little heavier. We don't wear you don't wear a white shirt when you're a heavy guy.
Well, to that point, there are some horizontal stripes on there. That as the bigger guys, the horizontal stripes, no bueno.
No, I know. It's like I got it. I got some. I don't own very many white shirts because it's just not a good. It's not a good.
A lot of black shirts in the PT's arsenal still.
Oh yeah, that's the problem. I have navy shorts, but every shirt I own is black or navy.
Yeah, your color combination is not supposed to look like a bruise. You're not supposed to look like black and blue. That is correct.
Right, exactly. So yes, sir, I own that a white shirt would go well with the navy.
Oh gosh,
I'm not at that point yet where I own a lot of white shirts. What do you got?
So too funny. So did you go with the? Oh boy, what do we have? This is the fashion. The
when he goes
here
over as fast as he did, it was like I have something here that I really need to say, and I'm imagining it's going to fall flat.
Well, maybe to you, but the point is that the person who says, "Oh, you should wear a white shirt," is probably also an individual who doesn't have a lot of diversity in their wardrobe. Like the
what do you
person,
mean? A lot of adversity.
A lot of diversity.
Oh, diversity.
Yeah, like I don't understand.
Well, I wouldn't say I have a lot of diversity. It's either navy or black.
You have way more diversity than I do, okay?
Well, that's not saying much.
And then PT has more diversity in his wardrobe too. But neither one of you go to the white T-shirt every day or every other day or every week.
I own one white T-shirt.
I've only seen you wear white once.
I don't own. I have one.
I've never seen PT wear a white shirt except for his undershirt.
So
It's
Gil,
right now.
I clicked on the, you see the stuff come up on your phone. I got one of those Spectrum T-shirts. It's an awesome shirt. I mean, it's well worth every bit of the $30 that I paid for.
I would imagine it looks pretty young on you
for a stinking T-shirt. However, it's only 3X, and it's a little snug on the PT. Right. So, we did about 3/4 of the show the other day, and Billy finally notices, and he says, "Oh, that's a nice shirt. Little snug though."
Right, that shirt's a little young on you there, PT. Now I've seen that shirt pop up on the ads a lot, but I have not bought it because of that reason. That material is just not. It's not good.
It's not forgiving.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't like everything. Ooh. Like I can't buy a non I like the dry fit like polyester type. The cotton stuff is not good.
Right. And it is. It's 100% cotton. Wash it once and you're going to be even more of a sausage casing.
What does this stat at the bottom of the screen mean to you tonight? When I tell you, Adam Gaskell texts in Facebook. He says, someone just tweeted that the Sixers are 5-18 with this group of refs tonight.
That to me says I might be yelling at my TV quite a bit. I mean, and I might not be the only one yelling. Listen, to me, the NBA officiating is a little bit inconsistent or a lot of bit inconsistent. And that's going to be a problem if, you saw in the Wizards series where when Ben got in trouble, they weren't able to come all the way back because he was in trouble, and the good news is he's 6'11". The bad news is that 6'11" tends to, pick up fouls depending on who the officiating crew is. So, yeah, that gives me pause. That definitely gives me pause.
Wayne Thomas is watching the show on YouTube, Pete. He says the Hawks trucked the Sixers without their best wing defender and the second or third best shooter, DeAndre Hunter.
Valid points. I don't know about trucked. It was a 4-point final,
and they certainly like 26.
Yeah, but they didn't. They certainly didn't finish the game up like a championship basketball team. They were peeing down their leg at the end of that game.
Championship team, though, that's the problem. I don't think the Hawks are a championship level team.
Right. but they were better than the Sixers were. I will give them
Well,
that. And the Sixers were slow to adjust. That's a lot of things that people are upset about. Obviously, the bench has to be better, and you can't put out an all bench team for any period of time. You have to have a starter out there, a legitimate starter out there. You know, Doc has to. I heard McGarry the other day, and I was like, yes, I agree. You can't just sit out there and go, all right, now this is the point in the game where I'm going to put my bench out. No.
I agree. And I talked to Coach Lynam about that as well. And he kind of said, look, that's, what's got them here. He's played those guys, but he kind of insinuated that, yeah, you got to shorten that up a little bit here if those guys aren't contributing or if they're not producing. And in that game, they didn't produce. It's weird. Some nights the Sixers play their bench and then, hey, they scored 16, 45 bench points. And other nights, it's like, man, their bench is a problem. To me, I look at the Nets last night. They played 3 guys off the bench for most of that game until it got out of hand. You got to shorten the bench up to 8 or 9. That's it, 8 or 9.
Yeah, when we were previewing the Hawks series and we knew that the first game was going to be coming, or we were looking at that first meeting. What was it, since like '82 or something like that, when they were meeting up for the first time in such a long time in the postseason? We went back and you look at you look at the Sixers teams of way back. And they only went 7 or 8 in the playoffs. There's something to that. There's 2 things that happen in the playoffs, right? It becomes a half-court game, and the number of people that are contributors to the game is much shorter. It's not 10 or 11. It's like 8 or 9.
Yeah. This gentleman, whose name is very long, watching on YouTube, says, why do people only think the Sixers are going to make adjustments like the Hawks aren't going to make any? He's right. The Hawks are going to make adjustments. The hard part is the Hawks won the game, so now they have to figure out what they need to adjust to because the Sixers lost, so they're making adjustments. So what are the Hawks actually adjusting to? Well, they're not sure yet because they're going to have to adjust to the Sixers' adjustments to them beating them.
And if I interpret this correctly, I think that he's a Vikings fan, and he might even be an old Randy Moss fan. Skol, that'd be Vikings. TYA catch 84. Wasn't Moss's number 84?
That's a good breakdown by you there on that gentleman's name.
This is what I do when I'm in traffic. I look at the custom plates and try to figure out what it means.
I would say that if the Hawks are making some sort of an adjustment, here's the thing. Their adjustment is – like the Sixers made the adjustment that they changed the defense up on Trae Young. Trae Young had 25. Jimmy Lynam was on. He said he wasn't an all-star. He was all-world. But then he went on to say he wasn't all-world in the second half because the Sixers made adjustments there. The adjustments that they need to make now is in the second half because they made 23s last game, PT. 23s. If they make 23s again, they're going to win.
Right, and when the Hawks were opening up their lead, it was Matisse Thybulle, Maxey, Dwight Howard, George Hill, and Furkan on the floor. I mean, that's the thing when I'm talking about you can't have the all-bench team out of there. You have to have Tobias Harris in at some point. You have to have Embiid in or Simmons or even Danny Green who got torched. You have to have some of these people who are legitimate starters in there. I understand you can mix a backup in here or there, but you can't throw the all-backup line out there and see how things go. And if you're a believer in stats, I mean, they're 1-8 in their last 9 second-round appearances. They beat the Raptors in 0-1, and finishes the NBA final runner-up. But, I mean, this has been – they're trying to win in a second-round series for the second time in their last 11, and that's the one that goes back to 86. So, yeah I mean, you do hope that the Hawks don't shoot the lights out again, and you do hope that the Sixers make some adjustments.
This is from Adam, who says, are the Sixers just hoping the Hawks don't shoot the lights out, or are they going to make some adjustments? My point is, do they think they need to, or did they just think the Hawks shot crazy?
I think they have to recognize that they need to make some adjustments, and that's you're not going to throw out you're not going to ditch your entire plan. Your plan is what got you to this point. Your personnel are your personnel. But that said, the definition of insanity is doing something over and over again and expecting a different result. And the insanity would be if they don't adequately prepare for Trae Young. I mean, look, I'll be the first to admit too. I knew Trae Young was good. I didn't know he was that good. And my goodness, was he that good in game one. If you take a little bit away from him, and when they did start to focus and change their defense up, he became somewhat human instead of just Superman.
Yeah. To go to that question, the first part, are the Sixers just hoping the Hawks don't shoot the lights out? Yeah, they don't want the Hawks to shoot the lights out, but they're going to try to make adjustments to make sure they don't get so many open looks. That was part of the problem. They got 47 three-point attempts. They made 20, and half of those 47 attempts, there wasn't anybody near them.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting, too? I mean, the guy is the Defensive Player of the Year candidate, but at the end of the game, the basket that basically clinched it for the Hawks was when who's the big white guy that got trapped on the baseline? They threw a trap at him, and he made that. I mean, that was an unbelievable pass for a big man to jump up and beat a double team by throwing that long diagonal pass. It was almost like rolling a strike down a bowling alley lane right at the end, where he threw the pass right down the middle, and it was a long bounce pass, and it put the guy in the clear, and Embiid had to foul him. I went back again. I happen to work with a guy that played in the NBA. You think he doesn't know a little bit about basketball? This guy played in the association, and here we are. We're supposed to be doing lesson plans, but it's June. Come on. So we were clicking through like a little John Madden telestrator, if you will, but for basketball. I said, all right, well, tell me who's in the wrong position here. And he's looking at things, and he basically put that last sequence on Ben Simmons, because Ben Simmons was sort of got lost in no man's land, and that's how the casual fan would look and say that Embiid got beat back down the court. But in reality, first of all, it was a hell of a pass, and second of all, it was on Ben Simmons, and that's troubling too. I mean, if you're failing to recognize in late game moments like that, you're going to get beat.
Yeah. Well, look, the fact of the matter was this: they had to come all the way back in this game. They did a lot of stuff differently, but I don't think. And Kevin Huter was the guy who made the pass.
That's the name. Yeah, like reddish hair.
Yeah, he's from Maryland. And by the way, he 3 for 6 from 3. He shot the lights out. Bogdanovich hit 5 3-pointers. See, what people don't get.
Yeah,
is Young is not a great 3-point shooter. He only shoots about 34%.
Right.
But the problem is he makes these threes from so deep that it makes you like, oh, my God, he's like a highlight reel shooting the three. But he's not a great 3-point shooter. You want him shooting the threes, not the other guys. It sounds crazy, but you don't want Bogdanovich and Huter to get those threes. You want Trae Young to be the guy that shoots. And if he shoots the lights out, he shoots the lights out. But then those other guys aren't getting these great open looks. Make him be the guy that shoots the volume threes. He only shoots 34% from 3. And at the end of the series, if he shoots 34% from 3, you probably win the series.
Yep. No, I would endorse that wholeheartedly. And I think I heard you earlier, maybe it was yesterday at some point, where you were also talking about the fact that once again, Bogdanovich gets overlooked as a guy that makes the Hawks go. I mean, Trae Young gets all the headlines and all the attention, but Bogdanovich can beat you too, and can be deadly as well. So, I mean, it's not just as you would expect at this time of the year. It's not just one guy that usually does the damage. And when you do end up losing, you're losing because multiple guys have beat you at certain points.
Pete Thompson, take Tuesday with Thompson here on the Sports Bash live on 97.3 ESPN, the free mobile app. And if you're watching the PT and I, you can see the live video over at 973ESPN.com. You can watch on your phone, tablet, your laptop. You can watch on your smart TV through the YouTube app. You can watch the show in a variety of ways, and I see that we got a lot of new people that are watching the show today. We appreciate that as well. So, all right, Sixers lose. Very disappointing. Are you concerned about this series, Peter?
Well, obviously, I mean, and I'm awake now, right? That's one of those things where you go into that first game and you're thinking like, oh yeah, I mean, and the euphoria of the fact that Embiid played. Like, listen, if you analyze game one, you sit there and go, your MVP candidate played as well as he could with a torn meniscus or a partial tear in his meniscus.
You're a good guy to ask this because you remember stupid things like this.
Fine.
Okay. I feel that every time there's something special that happens at the start of a game, a jersey retirement, somebody's numbers going up.
Oh yeah, the
They
new Lincoln,
time. The Sixers, the Phillies, the Fly, the home team loses anytime there's something special.
Now you may be onto something. The initial game ever at Lincoln Financial Field, and then oh my God, there's Sylvester Stallone, and if there was a roof, the roof was coming off the place, and then
they retired Reggie White's jersey. They lost 40-0 to Seattle.
Yeah, I remember that. It was rainy too. I mean, thank God for the halftime ceremony. That was the only thing that was entertaining.
Yeah, it was snowing that night. But look, whoever you can find the most boring guy to ring the bell tonight.
Who would that be? Would that be like Mark Ivoroni? No, who do you bring out to ring the bell that's boring, right?
Don't even ring the bell. Just say, guess what? The bell ringing is taking the night off tonight.
Well, somebody's going to ring it. I wonder who it's going to be.
Dr. J. That's my guess.
That's an easy go-to one. Or Allen Iverson's another easy go-to one.
Hey, they lost. So now it's like, we got to really get the people excited. They're going to try to bring out a big one, but somewhat overused one. Like Dr. J is the equivalent of the Phillies throwing Mike Schmidt out there.
Yeah, Mike Schmidt. That was interesting. Did you watch the net come down the other day? Were you, the
net coming on? It was on during the Sixers game.
I'm aware, but
the Phillies were playing on Sunday.
I mean, that was what I was going to in the jump. I'd go back and then I'd come back, and then fortunately, I think the Sixers had wrapped up actually, and I was able to go back and rewind the TV and look at what had happened on the netting coming down, and actually, again, this colleague that I work with. Who, of course, obviously has an affinity for broadcasting, it was 21 minutes or 20 minutes and 21 seconds of okay, we got to fill the time. And it was pretty entertaining. I mean, T-Mac sometimes is a little goofy and jocular, but to have T-Mac, Kruk, and Schmidt all commenting on what was going on here, and it was like the ultimate reality show, watching them try to, what kind of knot were they going to use? Is the John Deere going to work? Here's the guys from the Aramark coming in, and, and the fans were rooting them on, and whoever decided to play the William Tell Overture should get a raise. I mean, that was genius to have that music underneath, and the fans are going, pull, like they were doing like a giant tug of war.
I did see the highlights of the fact that it came down, which caused that game to be, 4.5 hours?
Oh, yeah. It went forever, but, at least it finished with a W, and we'll see what they do tonight.
I do have some breaking Eagles news, Peter.
Oh, do tell.
The final preseason game date has been set for Friday, August 27th.
Okay, that's fine. I was thinking it was going to be something a little more exciting than that. Or
do you like this message that came in?
Oh, there it is. Yes, to guess my handle correctly. Good on you, sir. Well, the skull was a big thing there, and I wonder what TYA stands for. But catch, I know, and 84, I know.
Throw ya catch. I don't know. I'm imagining he's listening in the Minnesota state of.
Throw you a catch 84?
Yeah,
something like that?
Catch 84? I don't know.
Okay. Does this guy still love Randy Moss so much that he goes into like a dinner party and pantomimes pulling his pants down and, like Randy did in the end zone that time?
I remember.
Yeah. I stopped short. Like Seinfeld. I stopped short.
So I was listening to you in the Schweimer on Sunday in the locker room.
Yeah, the best part about that is you can't mess with him when he's on the air. We get the commercial break. The guy's not paying attention because he's so wired up from what you said him, which is usually #facts, but you're just like that cat. And he's like, ah!
I loved your text the other night, though. Somehow you said, I am just laughing uncontrollably at your text message.
Yeah, you guys were going back and forth, and I stayed out of the fray for a little bit until I couldn't take it anymore, and I had to reveal that I was dying laughing.
Right, you're like, I am dying laughing, and then you tried to really save him by saying, "Meanwhile, I'm thinking Steve Javy would be a good guest."
Yeah, throw something in there, and that didn't slow you down. You were like a heavyweight fighter. You just came right back in for another body blow.
Yeah. You said, "Oh, MG, I'm dying at your answer." Dying laughing. Yeah.
It is. Listen, it's always entertaining to watch you beat up on somebody else, buddy.
Yeah, he says the Sixers underestimated and took the Hawks too lightly. And I write, or
you didn't watch them.
Credit for after watching them 0 times this season.
Yeah, that went over real well. That lit his fuse real fast.
Well, I said all week, everybody's going to think, oh, they're balks, the Hawks. I said they're better than everybody gives them credit for. This team is deep, man. The one problem, look, you say, well, they're so deep. Why? They don't have a second bona fide all-star star player. So I feel, you can only get so far with one star player. Now, the Sixers did it with Allen Iverson. They are very much like that team, where Allen Iverson and his merry men, this is a more talented merry men group.
I would agree with that, but the merry men need to step up because
actually, I take that back. I mean, the Sixers had Mutombo,
right, who was pretty dominant in the middle and a defensive. And they had the 6th man of the year that year, and Aaron McKee.
Yep,
that was probably Aaron McKee's best year as a pro.
Right, and they had the guys for that era that fit, like Tyrone Hill and Snow. They fit that era. This group fits this era. They've got Bogdanovich who shoots threes. They've got Huter who comes off the bench and shoots threes. Now, Hunter didn't play. He shoots threes. They have kind of a similar type of Iverson and a bunch of guys who know their roles. So they're much deeper and better than people gave them credit for, especially if you've never seen them play.
Yeah, that's true.
They're all names that jump off the page at you.
Right. I mean, who was jumping off the page at you? Like, even was Tyrone Hill real? It was, God, I didn't even realize this. Jermaine Jones. I forgot about that guy. Eric Snow, Raja Bell. Oh, you know who got 59 seconds in the clincher over the Bucks when they won to then go meet the Lakers? My boy Rodney Buford, who not only went to Creighton, but then his claim to fame. See, now he wouldn't even get in trouble for this because it's legal everywhere. But his claim to fame was that he was smoking the funny tobacco, and the clouds were coming out like a state patrol guy rolled by him, and it was just like clouds of smoke coming out of the car. And they're like, "Yeah, we're pulling that car over."
All right, Sports Bash Live. I think we went a little long.
That was fun, and I could hear Josh laughing about my Rodney Buford story, so it's all good.
What's better, the Rodney Buford story or the guy from the Cubs?
Which guy from the Cubs?
The Rockies.
Kit Pello. That's worth a whole half-hour show.
Kit Pello's a great name.
Kit Pello is a great story, and he was life minor leaguer.
If Boogie Nights made the movie, what was the movie in the movie that? John C. Reilly and Mark Wahlberg star in, right? And the guy's name is like Brock Landers, and the other guy is whatever.
Dirk Diggler.
That guy's name should be Kip Pellos. Like he goes to.
It's not Pellos, it's Pello. You're making it plural, like whatever. It's anatomy.
Whatever. But he goes to Burt Reynolds and he says their names are Brock Landers and Kip Pello.
Yeah, that was it. That was it. Kip Pello. I wonder where that guy is, man. What a great guy.
God. All right, Pete.
All right, man. We'll do it again on.
To ask me.
Say it again.
Unless you have something you'd like to ask me, I'm out.
No, just have a great rest of your day, and we'll talk again on Friday. Hopefully,
every bullet in this conversation.
That's fine. No, it was good. I enjoyed it very much. We'll do it again on Happy Hour.
Yeah, Happy Hour Friday, Peter.
Sounds good. Talk to you then.
All right, see you. He's Pete Thompson. That was a very off the rails version of Tuesday with Thompson. Talked about the color of my shirt. Yeah. All right. Sports Bet. I'm reading some of these text messages here. It says PB doesn't know who Kevin Huter is or what position he plays, but calling fans casual is comical. He didn't say he didn't know who he was. He asked who the guy was who threw the pass. He didn't remember who threw the pass. That's what he said. He said, I don't know who the guy is. He says, I don't remember who threw the pass. Is Matt Geiger available to ring the bell tonight? That's a funny one. So what I want you guys to do is text in the person, like Matt Geiger's a great name. Who would be the person that you would be the least excited to see ring the bell from the Sixers past? I got one. How about Kurt Nymphius or Bob Thornton? One of those two guys. Larry Hughes, maybe. Matt Geiger's a good name, though. Yeah. Somebody asked on Twitter today who should ring the bell, and I said the Road Dogg from DX. They just keep bringing out DX figures. Like, yeah, X-Pac next game. Badass Billy Gunn the next game after that. Can't do China. Right. Shawn Michaels, he would be like the next one. Just keep rolling out DX people. 609-403-0973. All right, Sports Bash Live, 97.3 ESPN. Don't forget, tonight you got the Sixers and the Hawks, and you can bet the game with DraftKings Sportsbook. Not only my favorite sportsbook, but it's America's top-rated sportsbook. I love using the DraftKings Sportsbook app. In fact, I was just looking at it. You know why? Because Jokic has just been named he's going to win the MVP award. They just announced that he's going to win the MVP. So I just went on my DraftKings Sportsbook app, and I bet Joel Embiid over 30.5 points. Easy to navigate. I did it that fast. Plenty of instructions for new bettors. Nearly limitless ways to get in on all the action tonight. They have a Joel Embiid, Trae Young combo, both over 30 points. They've got a Trae Young 50 points, rebounds, assists you can bet. So do it right now. Download DraftKings top-rated sportsbook app and use my promo code 973 when you sign up. You can turn $1 into $100 in free credits. Bet on the basketball team of your choice to win their next game. And if they do, you'll claim $100 in free credits. That's promo code 973 for a limited time only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Must be 21 or older, New Jersey only. New customers only. Wager paid out in site credits. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. So, yeah, that news just came out from Shams. Nikola Jokic has won the MVP. And look, that is going to be one of those things. He is a guy who was the 41st pick in the draft, second-round pick. He's the lowest draft pick in NBA history to win the MVP award. I mean, quite frankly, I said before, you got to give it to Embiid. I think he's just more important to their team. But I've kind of backed off on that, looking what this guy has done and what this team has done. That team, the Denver Nuggets, held their ground. Jokic got them there when Murray went out. So I do tip my cap to Jokic. But I still think Embiid was the best player in the NBA this season. I know he didn't play as much, but every argument for Jokic over Joel is he hasn't missed a game all season. Look, this isn't the perfect attendance award, okay? This is the most valuable player award. So, to me, I would have given it, if I had a vote, for Nikola Jokic. But tonight, I don't want to be the Atlanta Hawks playing against Joel Embiid. That is what I know. So I like the Sixers even more tonight, knowing that Joel Embiid has that fire lit under his ass a little bit. Because I think in Joel Embiid's mind, he was the MVP, that he thinks he was the best player. And by the way, he should. The Sixers can win a title because they have an MVP candidate. Can the Nuggets win a title? I don't think we believe that. And there's your difference. But it's not surprising that Embiid is not the MVP. 609-403-0973. 609-403-0973. Yes, this guy talking about Kevin Huter. Yeah, I know. That's what he said. He was a guy. He said, I don't remember the guy who made the pass. He was describing the guy, but he said he didn't remember who it is. They have Gallinari on the team. They've got Bogdanovich on the team. I mean, come on, man. Let's see. Who should ring the bell? Sam Hinkie should ring the bell. You can't bring Sam Hinkie out in a game like this, Steve. Yeah, I think Hinkie is only the bell ringer in the Eastern Conference Finals final home game or the NBA Finals final home game. You can only bring Hinkie out in the biggest of big game. This isn't the biggest of big game. Not yet, anyway. Tom from the Villa says, bring out Jeff Rowland to ring the bell. There's a blast from the past name. Rowland, of course, traded for Moses Malone. That didn't work out so well. Ring the bell. Mike Schmidt. You can't bring out a Phillies player. You got to, bring out one of them guys. Bring out one of them guys from, not Allen Iverson, but maybe they've already did Mutombo. Maybe, if they could find Andrew Toney to do it, That would be a good one. Clarence Weatherspoon, that's funny. If you can find like Andrew Toney, that'd be a great one because no one ever sees him. Eric Snow, somebody mentioned up. How about Rodney says have Elton Brand ring it? Elton Brand, yeah, it's not bad, but the guy who said Geiger, Matt Geiger is a great one to bring up. Hey, Matt Geiger, it's just like so. Sir Charles Jersey P says, no, we're looking at a guy who's obscure because every time they do something special, they bring out like the high-level guy. They lose that game. They got to go the opposite direction and bring out a guy that people are like, and ringing the bell, it's a symbol, it's Matt Geiger. And the people are like, huh, what? Wait, what team was he on? Scott Williams is the guy I would like to see. I was so pumped when they signed him from the Bulls. 15-year-old me was apparently clueless. Scott Williams, Sharon White, and Sean Bradley were all bust in Philly in the early to mid-'90s. I am down with the Heartbreak Kid ringing the bell tonight. Also, Bobby Jones was the greatest six-man ever. There was a lot to unpack there. Scott Williams, you're right, because that whole if Scott Williams plays 35 minutes a game, he's going to average like 19 points, 15 rebounds, and, that never worked. Sharon Wright was a busteroni. 6th pick in the draft, I think Sharon Wright was, and he stunk. And Sean Bradley, I got to admit, I was so intrigued by Bradley. When they took him number 2, I was pumped. I was like, dude, they got the next great player, and man, he stunk. He was a stiff. Hersey Hawkins, that's a good name. For a while there, Hersey Hawkins was my favorite player. I loved Hersey Hawkins. He unfortunately was disappointing. I hate to say that, but he was somewhat disappointing. He was actually pretty good for Seattle when he went to the Sonics. Yeah, he was on that team that went to the finals with Peyton, Sean Kemp. What else we got? Jokic won the MVP. I said, I already bet Jokic, Embiid over 30.5 points. I'd go bet that now and use my code 973 on the DraftKings Sportsbook app. I'm trying to think of a name that would be the topper to Matt Geiger today. Matt Geiger's the best name so far of like irrelevant Sixer to ring the bell to get the fans not overly excited. I don't want the fans in a frenzy. I don't want them overly excited. I just want them to be like, what just happened here? I don't want the Hawks to be like, let's get go. No. Dana Barros, that's funny. Dana Barros, I watched that game that he scored 50 that one night. You know the other guy who scored 50 in a game? Willie Burton. Remember that? You remember the game he scored 50? I think it was against the Heat. Good Willie Burton knowledge right there. All right, we got the sound of the day. We had a good show today. Frank, MKB, Jimmy Lynam. I think you should just play all Jimmy Lynam bites today. Hey, we'll have a special Sixer pregame tonight after game night. By the way, Paul Hudrick tonight at 6:20. If you miss Jimmy Lynam and Michael Kaskey-Blomain, we will re-air those tonight from 7 to 7:30, leading into the Sixers game at 7:30 tonight. So we'll have a special half-hour re-air of Jimmy Lynam and Michael Kaskey-Blomain, give you some more Sixers content leading in. So if you're like, oh, man, I miss Coach Lynam, you can go listen to it on YouTube, or if you're going to be in your car, we'll have them on tonight between 7 and 7:30. Back with more. All right, 11 minutes till the top of the hour tonight. Don't forget, game night tonight, Paul Hudrick at 6:20. He'll have a full preview of the Sixers and the Hawks. That's coming up tonight at 6:20 here on game night here on 97.3 ESPN. All right, before we get ready to finish out the show with our sound of the day, I want to tell you what's coming up this week and weekend. We got tonight, Sixers and Hawks. Thursday night, Bucks and Nets round 2. We'll go over to Sixers Hawks on Friday this weekend. On Saturday, it's Padres and Mets, Jazz and Mavs on Saturday. And then on Sunday, Bucks Nets game 4, Cardinals Braves in that one as well on Sunday Night Baseball. I told you earlier that the MVP is going to be Jokic. He has been named the MVP for the season. And yesterday, Tom Thibodeau was named the Coach of the Year. Doc Rivers finished in 4th. I'd like to do a longer segment on that, but I ran out of time. Maybe I'll do something on that tomorrow. But I wanted to go through the coaches that were in the running for Coach of the Year and then ask people, are they good coaches or bad coaches?
Oh, please do that segment tomorrow. I don't care if the Sixers win or not. There has to be a segment tomorrow.
Right?
I mean, I went on this rant on Saturday, on Sports Bash Saturday, about how this stuff with NBA coaches just drives me nuts. I mean, we've had now 2 guys, quote unquote, part ways with their team, and Brad Stevens vacates his job because he's burned out. Like, nobody's been fired yet. But you're supposed to tell me that Brad Stevens, Steve Clifford, and Terry Stotts are what exactly? Nobody can answer that question.
Well, Terry Stotts has been a guy who's won 50-plus games but can't win in the playoffs.
He only got as far as conference finals.
Is he a bad coach, or is his team not good enough?
Right. If
he was a better coach,
right,
would they go for? They went to the Western Conference Finals, by the way, one
couple years ago.
Yeah. Is he a bad coach, or is his? Did he get a lot? Did he get more out of the talent? Did he not get enough?
And that's why I keep trying to explain to people. People blame the coach every time something goes wrong. To which I ask, are you sure it's the coach or it's not the player? Are you sure it's the coach, or maybe the GM gave him bad pieces?
Well, I hate using the Vogel one all the time, but you can add another layer to it now.
Sure.
Vogel was in Indiana. He had good players. He was a good coach. He went to Orlando. He had bad players. He wasn't a very good coach. He went to L.A. He got LeBron and AD. He won the championship. And this year, LeBron and AD banged up, and all of a sudden, Frank Vogel wasn't a very good coach again. He was just a good coach. He wasn't great. He got them. He got as far as the talent on his roster would get him. Yes, the coach plays a factor. He plays a role. I thought Doc Rivers played a role the other night. If you are going to run the same 5 guys out there all night long, that's something that the coach controlled.
Right.
And I thought some of his, but it's these little, scheme X and O, this and that. Throughout the course of a game, those players, the Sixers have wide open looks. They don't make the shots. The Hawks had wide open looks. They made the shots.
I was saying to a buddy of mine last night and this morning, because him and I have been tweeting at each other for some reason. He won't text me because he's blowing me up on social media. I've known him since high school.
Well, he wants everybody else to see that you're wrong.
Well, I'm not wrong. He's wrong. But the point is that I keep asking him, are you sure the coaches didn't prepare the Sixers and that the Sixers just didn't execute in the first quarter?
Tyrese Maxey said as much, that we need to stick to the game plan. They essentially kind of suggested they strayed away a little.
We always want to blame the coaches.
It's easy, though.
It's cheap. It's lazy.
Of course it is, but it's an easy way for someone to watch a game and then just say, it's the coach's fault, it's the coach's fault. It's always like the parent. It's not my kid's fault. It's the coach's fault that my kid's sitting on the bench.
That's where it started. That's where
that's where these
problem started.
That is where the genesis of it's the coach's fault began. Is a coach told you that you weren't good enough, or told you your son wasn't good enough. So now it's not the player. It's the coach who's wrong all the time.
Because the players
they're wrong.
Capable.
I would say it's 75%, 25%.
Yeah.
Maybe even
80,
20 or like less.
Depends on the sport too. But I mean,
it depends on the sport. I'm talking about NBA. Even the college basketball, I think the coach has more of a factor.
Way more of a factor.
Yeah, the college game is different. I think the coach has more of a factor in the college game than in the NBA game.
Let me ask you, Mike.
And especially in the high school game. There's no shot clock.
If guys are not rotating on defense and no player at any point turns around and be like, we should maybe change what we're doing on the defensive play call here on the floor, is it the coach's fault or the player's fault? Shouldn't the player be smart enough to know?
Well, I think like in the huddle, that's where players come in and say, this isn't working. We've got to do this. Or someone say, well, the coach should recognize that. The players recognize it. The players will say, look, this is not working.
Are the players too stupid to think for themselves? Is that what we're saying?
Well, a lot of times, it's not to say they're stupid, but they've been so overcoached growing up. You know?
I guess. I don't know. I think that's.
But like my point is Terry Stotts, who's the other guy?
Steve Clifford.
The other guy.
Brad Stevens.
Brad Stevens won a ton of games. Never won a finals, but,
that's the conference finals.
He decided that being the executive was more important than being the coach.
He did better than Brett Brown.
All right. Paul Hudrick at 6:20 tonight. Game night, and a special re-air of the Jimmy Lynam conversation will lead you into the Sixers. I'm Mike Gill. This has been the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. Have a great night, everybody.